You got Nasty Nelson by Jack Sock?
I did. Yeah, I can't believe nobody's Nasty Nelson to me before this. I got hit, and that was the immediate thought. I was like, I deserved it. B, I can't believe nobody else has done this yet. Yeah, I started laughing right away, but he wasn't laughing, man. He wasn't particularly happy with me.
Do you guys have
Seemed
beef?
like apparently, seems like it. I think Jack, will initiate some shit talking, which I'm all for. But like, if you initiate, like, I'm absolutely going to engage. I think he hit a shot into the net, takes the ball, and basically like rolls it around the net post, and then taps it like an inch while me and Declan are standing back at the baseline, and it was very petty.
I love it.
And yeah, but like I'm ready to get down and dirty at any point. And so like I think I miss a shot next. I grab the ball and I say really loud, I hit the ball like right to Erik. I'm like, "Here you go, Erik. Here's the ball for you." Um just stupid. And then like I think we win the point. It's Jack serve and he just nails me. I did tell him, like, even at this point, I didn't have like any beef with Jack. After the match, I told him like, "Hey, nice shot," and he just walked away.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, rather had fun,
Tice, I told you to jump on a whim, but I feel like maybe we just run it and you're on this first section. We'll talk a little. I want to talk MLP. I want to talk Max Freeman. I want to talk what you're just talking about, Will Howells, and maybe a little Staksrud paddle stuff. But the number one thing I wanted to have you jump on and talk about was the Max Freeman thing, because I didn't see it anywhere else. We were just talking about it in Slack yesterday. But obviously there was the debacle with his UPA agreement or lack thereof, having to drop all those partners.
Yeah.
We recorded a show earlier in the week that will go out like as part of this episode. So we're sort of correcting or giving an update to the previous speculation. So people generally have the information, but give us a breakdown. Like, what's the latest with Freeman? Sounds like he signed an agreement now.
Yeah. So Max was partnered with players like Ben Johns, Leah Jansen, James Ignatowicz. Trying to think. I think he had one with Dylan, maybe with Dylan. He had a bunch of good partners. And then the rule came out. This was all made, these plans were made in 2024. And so then the rule came out that players basically on PPA Tour, if you're a signed UPA player, you have to play on the PPA Tour with other signed players. Therefore, he is not signed and he can't play with signed players. So the only route he had was either sign, play qualifiers with different partners that aren't signed, or play the PPA Challenger Series. Those were his three options if he wanted to play on the PPA Tour. So he had to drop all of his future partners because he was not signed, and including Ben Johns, like all of those people I just named. And on the 17th, which is Monday, I believe MLP has an eligible player list, and they marked him on that eligible player list as eligible in MLP, and he signed a UPA contract. Essentially, it's a regular UPA contract where he will be playing PPAs and ML. He will be eligible for MLP to be drafted.
Mm-hmm. So he's got then a completely unique deal.
I don't think his deal is completely unique. I think it's a normal UPA deal that he signed. When he was not signing, or when he was unsigned, he made it a point, because I wrote that article about him dropping Ben Johns, but he made it a point that he didn't want, it wasn't really about the money. It was more about the length of time of the contract. It was a 3-year deal. And I don't know the details of the deal. I don't know if maybe they gave him a little bit lesser of like a 2-year deal, or maybe they upped the money in negotiations. I don't know the details of that, but it seems to me like a normal UPA deal.
Cool.
Do some journalism.
I could.
Journalism, bro.
Yeah.
All right. And then what about Will Howells? Because I know this one
Yeah.
is very unique, right?
Yeah. So this one is definitely more unique. I don't know all of the details around this one, but from what I do know, it doesn't seem like Will is going to be playing PPAs this year. He's just going to be playing MLP because he had prior contract obligations.
With PWR, correct? Right?
Yeah,
Like that's
correct.
that's his contract. So
Yeah,
he's the
so
only
he's-
person that we know of, right, that can be playing both PWR and MLP.
I don't think that's true. I think there is one other player out there that can do that, and he is doing that. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but Eric Lang also has an MLP contract and is scheduled to play PWR. So it's
Interesting.
very similar to that contract, I believe.
Got it.
And I do believe, though, that Will's is a structured contract and a regular UPA contract after 2025. So I do believe we'll see him playing PPAs in 2026. I don't have that confirmed, but I think that's what the situation is.
Interesting. Do you think there's discontent among the other players? Like we were able to get this deal done with Will or with Erik or with Max at the last minute. And I mean, look, what we've learned now, I think, is that negotiations actually start at 11 p.m. of the deadline, right? That's when we're actually going to get something or another done. Like, is there even any point in starting negotiations before that?
Doesn't seem that way. It seems like, okay, there are a lot of players in negotiations for a UPA contract. I don't know if that's well known or not, but so these contracts that are being offered are much less than what during the tour wars, what those contracts were. So these up and coming players really are having to make tough financial decisions in terms of, do I sign with UPA or not? And UPA has signed, I think that on that list, I would say they've signed at least 10 players in the last 2 weeks or so, to my knowledge. So I'm sure there is some discontent among certain groups of players for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So what's the next deadline? The next deadline would be for them to sign players who haven't previously played MLP, right? There's a big deadline ahead of the ad drop time where players like, Will needed to have a deal so the fives knew whether or not they could keep him, right?
Yep.
But Max Freeman didn't necessarily need a deal because he hadn't played
Right.
MLP previously. So what's the next big deadline where we'll probably see the next slew of signings?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the answer is March 2nd. So let me caveat something. In speaking with the league yesterday, the league has made it so that there is a possibility of some of these. This is going to sound crazy as I say this out loud, so just bear with me. The league has left the door open for some of these unsigned players who were dropped from MLP teams, if they're able to get a deal done with the UPA before the March 2nd draft, those teams will be allowed to retain those players. It's only a few players. And if that player was like, let's say a team had 3 keepers and they dropped that player, obviously they're not able to keep that player. So it would be in a circumstance where multiple players were dropped.
So Chicago Slice circumstance where they've dropped all 4 because none of them were UPA signed.
Right. So if for some reason one of those UPA players or one of those unsigned players do sign with UPA, Chicago could retain them.
Interesting.
But the big deadline is March 2nd, because if they're not on the eligible list by then a player, let's say a player signs April, whatever, 1st, it doesn't matter. The next time they would be eligible to play an MLP is going to be that June waiver period. And that there's only one waiver period. So let's say I sign in July, that just means no chance I'm playing MLP in 2025. So there's only one waiver period. And it's like kind of in the middle of the season. But if you look at the actual schedule, the challenger teams have only played one event, 5 matches before this waiver period, and then they have the rest of the season to go. So it's a little tough.
Damn.
Yeah.
Better get picked up sooner rather than later if you want to play MLP.
Right. For sure.
Well, since we have you,
Yeah.
what do you think about the Hustlers just cleaning house?
Hey, GM opening spot for you there, Tice.
I thought it was going to happen, to be honest. I do understand dropping Jack and Riley. Like, they both combined to keep them. It was $275,000 each for the Hustlers to keep them, and that's them paying that to the league. They're two of the most expensive guys in MLP. And I think in the draft we'll see on Sunday, March 2nd, I do think they will go for much less than that keeper price. I don't understand the dropping of Leia. She only costs like $77,000 to keep, and minimum price on bids is $10,000. Also, the women's field is going to be extremely thin. By extremely thin, I mean there's like 4 players that have played Premier in the last year or two, and then a very large drop-off. There's Leia, there's Kate Fahey, there's Viv David, and there's Callie Jo Smith. That's like the Premier level players, and then below that is some good. I'm not saying they're bad, but there's good challenger level players. So the dropping of Leia just doesn't make sense to me, because she's probably going to be the most expensive player, or one of the most expensive players in this new 2025 draft, because there's so few women, and there's like 4 really, really good women that are being like teams are going after, and there's like 5 or 6 teams that really need a good woman. So there's a scarcity issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think this year is just going to be I think it's clear that the Hustlers just don't have any interest in paying money, right? This year is going to be a bit of a farce of MLP, in my opinion, because you have 6 teams that clearly want to win, 4-ish teams that are going to be in that mid-tier bucket that are never going to compete with the top 6, and then 4 teams below that are, or whatever that is, like 6 teams below that are just completely uncompetitive. I mean, the slice is just going to be a walkover match every single time because they have 0 players, right? I think it's really disappointing, because one of the things that we've loved about MLP over the years was the parity. Anybody could beat anybody on any given weekend. Now you have teams that are now the top from the bottom is so much more spread out, right? Your dupers at the beginning of these drafts would be like, your team dupers would be separated by like half a point. Now your top team is probably going to be like 2.5 points higher than your bottom team. Like, uncompetitive.
For sure. Here's a crazy stat for you, Zane, to talk about that. So last year, when the 2024 draft happened, between Premier and Challenger, there were 88 players on the, there's 22 teams, 4 players on each team. Of those 88, 35 players are actually going to be playing on the same team in 2025 that they were in 2024. So it's 60% of the players have moved teams or been dropped or traded or whatever. So I think, this is just my opinion, I think the drop rule and all of those waiver periods in 2024 really kind of hurt the continuity of teams in MLP. And I think that it was an overcorrection to then worry about like parity, because like you said, I don't think there's going to be that much parity this year for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the league at some point needs to have a league minimum spend, right? Like the NBA,
yeah, for sure.
Hit a certain point, a certain percentage of the cap. Like, it's going to be brutal. Like, I think it's going to be a bad MLP product.
Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be some of that. There has to be, because if you look at the player list, some teams need like 3 women, and when you get down to like, let's go 10 deep or 20 deep, it's not like some of these players haven't played MLP before, or even Challenger.
Right. Yeah. Were there any other surprises from your end on the MLP ads and drops?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. I mean, I guess the Chafitzes don't really care about finances, which is fine, but I just don't understand dropping Kate Fahey when you know that. So I think Kate was $8,500 to keep, and Gabe is like 89 or $98,000, something like that, $90,000 to keep. And Kate is going to be, in my opinion, much higher demand than Gabe in terms of like I said, there's 4 elite women that are available now, and there's 15 elite men available. I think it would have cost a lot less to drop Gabe and pick him back up. So
Well, you
I
have to think
don't get.
about which teams are actually. Again, we only have 6 teams that are interested in spending money. It seems like,
Yeah,
right? You have
right.
Columbus. Seems like they're willing to make a play this year, so Columbus
Yep.
is going to be in that market. You've got the Fives. We're looking for our second female. You're going to have the Squeeze, who
Yep.
maybe they pick Vivian back up. Maybe that's their play. And then there's probably a couple of more, but like
The shock.
Shock, of course. DC doesn't need a woman right now, right? So there's
Yep.
5 teams bidding over those four players, right? Like, I mean, but then who do you are you seeing that the Shock should have dropped Gabe?
Yeah, yeah, I 100% think they should have dropped Gabe because there's already drops of left side guys. James, Jack, I would call Riley a left side guy still. Right. And so there's a lot of left side guys that are available. Gabe is preferred on the right. So I think you could go get even if the Shock had to go pay 200,000 to keep Gabe, right? Like they know they're worried about another team drafting a right side guy. They overbid, they pay $200,000. That's only $100,000 over what it would have cost to keep him. And I'm saying Kate is going to go for more than that. So financially, it just didn't make sense to me. But if money doesn't matter and they just want to go get back and get Kate or Alea or whoever they want, then they're fine. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
Cool. All right, Tice, thanks for coming on. We're gonna
Yep.
rattle through some more topics. If you want to
Yep.
see a full breakdown of the keepers and drops, is that what we're calling them? Keepers and drops.
Keepers and drops. I couldn't come up with a better name.
Yeah, go to the dinkpickleball.com. Tice did a really good breakdown. Thanks, Tice. Talk
Thanks,
to you
guys.
later.
T-Dog.
Bye.
Bye. He's funny. He cracks me up.
I like Tice.
Good stuff.
He's doing good work out there.
Yeah, I mean, if we throw him on a call like that on a whim and he just goes off, you know he's in deep.
Rattled off the stats like it was nothing. No
Yeah.
prep.
Okay. One thing he said though, which I think has just been an issue for a long time, is the density of talent on the female side. I have a question for you. If I were to find an ex-D1 athlete here in New York City, female, how long do you think it would take to train her to break into a main draw PPA? And then how long do you think it would take to get her to a point where she actually gets drafted to a Major League Pickleball squad?
All right, you find her in New York City and then you ship her to Florida, right?
Yeah.
In
I guess
New York
that
City, it's
would
never going to
be-
happen.
Well, I think there are some like decent, I mean, because let me ask you a question. If a female regularly trains and plays with the top guys in New York, that's good talent to practice and train against, right?
Yeah, I mean, like Rachel does something similar, right? She doesn't have like great girls, and I think she's in Cincy, but like, she plays with some of the better guys, and it seems to work for her. Yeah, I mean, you could play against some of the guys. I mean, I think the timeline does look different if you are in New York versus taking that person and shipping them to Austin or South Florida, right? Like, I think it probably takes the time in half if you go to one of those hotbeds. But like, I mean, it does depend on the person. So I would say there's obviously we've talked about how some people's games translate better to pickleball than others. Let's take a person who has a tennis game that translates well. They're smart. They know how to, train, and they take it seriously. Like, I think you can probably have somebody who is able to make challenger within 6 months on the female side. Guys, I think it's a much longer transition there. But on the female side, I think if you have somebody who, again, has the game, has the work ethic, I think you can be challenger level 6 months.
Challenge
You got
accepted.
sounds like you got somebody in mind, huh?
Maybe a few different in mind. Part of me wants to do it literally from scratch, like never been on a pickleball court before, but was like a high level, D1 tennis player and see. I think there's a big difference between somebody who's already done played at least a few like higher level rec matches, doesn't play a ton, isn't super dedicated, but
Right.
has the general concepts and fundamentals down, right? Because there is that like initial learning curve. And then after that, to me, it just feels like you just got to get high level reps.
Agreed.
Staksrud, interesting
Hey.
scenario here. He signs seemingly a pretty big deal with Adidas. He's their flagship player. They launched their new paddle. They want to go through this whole rebrand. I know they want to stop getting memed on memes of pickleball. Staksrud seemed like a good first step in that direction, but Staksrud obviously did not get the result that he was hoping for. Or was it in Tucson? And I think he talked to Alex on our team. He said, I think it's safe to say that he didn't feel comfortable with what happened last time. So we made a decision of making sure that whatever I'm going to use in the future, I'm feeling super comfortable. We're just waiting. We're just in that process right now. So it sounds like he's basically said to Adidas, and to their credit, they've accommodated him, and maybe it was part of the agreement, which it should be, by the way. I think most players now, they need to make sure they have competitive paddles. If they don't, that brand should have to go back to the drawing board, which is essentially what Adidas is doing. And I think it was yesterday we saw that Staksrud was back to playing with Yola. So he's outfitted in Adidas, but he's got a Yola paddle in hand for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. I mean, that's brutal. The big question was like, I think I tweeted this out right when the Adidas news came out, and a lot of people were saying like, there's no way Fed is changing to Adidas without knowing that this paddle is good enough. But the problem is, I've gone through this process a million times. He probably got a great prototype paddle, which was like a one of one, like, here's what we made, here's what we can do. And that always ends up being different than what you end up playing with, right? So it seems like the production versions are probably not up to his expectations. But like, was that ever going to be an upgrade from a Yola? Like, he had to know it's going to be, regardless of what happens, it's not going to be an upgrade from what he was playing with. So
Right.
what is Adidas? I mean, I don't know if these paddles are on the market yet, but like, if they are, and I bought one, like, I'm returning it immediately. Like, I just can't see how this is anything but an absolute nightmare to be back in the memes of pickleball again.
Yeah. I think it is sort of a testament to once upon a time, if you found the right manufacturer, and a lot of the paddle brands were using the same manufacturers overseas, you could have a cutting edge paddle, right? You could put it out onto the market and your brand could be competitive theoretically if you did the marketing right. Now we're at a point where, I mean, even some of the established brands are having trouble releasing paddles, products, and having technology that's at parity with, Yola or the Ronbus Ripple, right? So I think we're at a point now where you got to do R&D. You got to have the manufacturing expertise, and you can't just go on to Alibaba and find a manufacturer and spin up a paddle, put a cool design on it, and call it a day.
Yeah, I mean, I just also maybe it's in the contract or whatever. I can't see how Adidas signs a contract with a player that says like you can go back and switch to something else in between. Like kind of got to be all or nothing. Like that process should have maybe Fed should have signed a deal starting in July, right? Where it's contingent upon making a good paddle. But the visual of he played with it at a horrible tournament and now he's back to the other one is like I think devastating.
Yeah, I think they're in a predicament too because it's like, do you take the number one player and literally you're now responsible for his fall,
Right. Do
right?
you tank him? Like, do you force him to tank, or do you let him play with something else? But this is also contingent upon them actually making a good paddle at some point, right? Like,
Yeah,
great, I'm getting paid by Adidas. I'm wearing the clothes. I'm using a Yola paddle. This is best case scenario, right? How long do they let that go before it's like, all right, well, we're out of here?
yeah. I mean, Stockford said they're giving me the freedom to keep playing with what I'm comfortable with until we make things right, which is super vague, ambiguous. What does make things right mean? Probably just means he feels it's a total feel thing, right? Um, but yeah, you couldn't create. It would be way worse to create a situation where Stockford is losing, right? He knows he should be winning. And the only thing to point to is Adidas, and he gets frustrated because he's not allowed to revert back to a paddle that keeps him competitive. And now if I were him in that scenario, assuming it like progressed to that, I would get vocal. Now he is like trashing the brand, right? So I think they had to let him go back. It was the right thing to do. Now they need to design a paddle that is competitive, but then they also are beholden to the UPA-A approving that paddle, right? So that's a
This
whole
is a
nother thing.
nightmare every way you look at it.
Yeah, like how quickly, even if they did come up with something, could they actually get it on market and have it approved for Stockford to play? Um, I don't know.
Right.
I guess
Also,
we'll have to
I
see.
can't imagine that Adidas at this point, yes, they have unlimited resources basically. Like they could fix this quite quickly, I think, if they pour enough money into it. I just can't imagine they have like 15 different prototypes sitting around ready to go, right? Like it seems like this is probably like we shot our shot with this one. We thought that was our best one. We got to go back to the drawing board. So I'd have to guess it's 3+ months before they could really get if everything goes according to plan. It's got to be 3 months. It's got to be mid-year before Fed's got another Adidas paddle in his hand.
Yeah, the worst thing they could do is rush it and be the
Yeah,
same
but I can't
conditions
imagine they
in
don't
3
rush it,
months.
right? Aren't you
Yeah,
going to rush it?
you're trying to thread the needle. It's going to be tricky. So I guess we'll see what
Thread the
happens.
needle. Thread the needle like the needle between somebody's chest and their head for this new targeting rule, Thomas. You see that segue?
Wow, wow.
That was pretty manufactured. That was pretty forced, huh? But we got to talk about it.
Professional podcasting. Yeah, the targeting rule. So, I mean, what's your take? What do you think?
If I'm commissioner, I probably don't make a rule, but also I think they probably had an internal conversation of like if we don't I wonder if they even had legal exposure to like if we don't make a rule sort of preventing this, can somebody come after us?
That's
So
okay. That's what I wrote down is like with this rule, who are they appeasing? Do the players care that much? Is it like could it be like an insurance thing? I feel like it's not, but I'm trying to think like who are the people behind the scenes like really pushing for them to make this change and like what benefit does it bring? And
yeah.
if you're saying it's player safety, which I agree in theory, but point out the instance where a player got truly injured from like a ball to the face or a ball to the eye. Like it hasn't happened. You look at
Jesse
like
got smacked in the face by Dylan and was ruled
right, and
out with a concussion.
that is true. She did, but like you watch that clip, it to me it looked more like she was just really frustrated. Like, it's really annoying to get hit in the head. But I guess she did get a concussion.
I don't know.
Was
I
that
sat next to
confirmed?
her I sat next to her while she was getting concussion tested. Either she's a good actress or she was a little loopy.
Okay, so she was that's interesting. That must have been a really hard hit ball. Like that. I've seen that clip a bunch.
It was worse. It seemed worse in person. The clip doesn't look as bad as it was.
Well, you don't
on
get
the
the
court.
sound and you don't get like the reaction from the crowd in that moment. Like that doesn't come
Right.
through in a clip. So
Even
I'm sure
hitting her in the
being
head,
there
it was a freak accident, right? Like
yeah.
it caught her in like if it hit her right in the forehead, it would have bounced off. She would have been fine, like pissed but fine. I feel like it caught her in like right in here, almost like the temple or like the under eye area, which was just like maybe that rattled her brain. But
Yeah, I just look at like I look at pretty much any other professional sport and the risk of injury is there. Like you're never going to mitigate it entirely. Concussions are pretty common in a lot of other sports. I mean, you even look at hockey, for example. It's like you take a stick to the face. I mean, these guys a lot of them don't even wear face shields. It's just, and there's a hockey puck like
right.
that going a lot faster than a pickleball. And they seem to avoid getting hit in the face pretty consistently, right? And if they do, it is what it is. But
Look,
they're not going to
Thomas,
try and like,
hockey players are way tougher than we are. Let's not. This is different caliber of athlete.
well, yeah, and it's going to stay that way if we keep putting the guardrails up and safety proofing the sport. This is, I don't know. To me, the risk is minimal. Okay, so to increase this or to introduce this targeting rule, I was thinking like at first I was like, why? Like I don't really understand. Like it just why would you do it? I think even having the threat of head hunting is kind of like a fun dynamic, especially when you have like a Ben going out there just like smoking balls at people's faces. So to remove that element is I don't know, it just seems pretty inconsequential. But then I was thinking about it and it's like, okay, let's read through it, right? As such, okay, so intentional or reckless targeting of an opponent above the shoulders is considered extreme unsportsmanlike conduct and is subject to the following enforcement penalty. In matches with officials, if a player deliberately or recklessly directs a powerful shot at powerful's vague shot at an opponent's head, like what if I lob a ball at your head? Is that unsportsmanlike, right? But if I rip it and then where's that line? Whatever, not going to debate that. Recklessly directs a powerful shot in an opponent's head or neck area, the offending team will receive a technical foul resulting in a point added to the opponent. There will also be a minimum fine of $2,500 to the offending player. At this point, both teams will be warned about retaliation. So to me, you can still kind of do it. You just give a point away and maybe there's a $2,500 fine, which actually makes it more of like there's more oomph to if you were to go and like fire a shot at somebody's head. And it really isn't
You really
that
meant
big
it.
of a consequence. Yeah, right. It almost makes it more of a warning shot than it was before, So they didn't remove it. They just made it more impactful if you're going to do it. Like if Ben's going to go do that again, he's really making a statement this time. So they didn't actually remove it from the game.
Yeah, there's post-match fines for it, and the referees can give you point penalties. If a referee ever calls this, I'm gonna throw a fit. Like this should all be reviewed afterwards. The referees are going to screw this up royally if it's ever called. I don't think that I personally don't think this is ever going to be enforced. Not once. I think that they made the rule and that's enough. I don't think people are going to go at the face. I do also think that this rule should have been called a headhunting rule instead of a targeting rule. At least the way that I think about it, I'm targeting people all the time. Targeting is what we talked about, which Collin likes to call pegging, which is just going right at the body. Zero problem with that. Headhunting is something different, in my opinion.
The pickleball commenters on social have been very funny with the pegging stuff. The amount of just the word pause in the
That's the
comments.
first thing that ran through my head when he said it. I was like, pause.
And every time I read pause, I laugh. It's just so funny to me. So let's keep
Thomas,
going with this.
But
What?
here's the thing: we gotta go back. How did you not take my suggestion to name that episode "Strap In"? Collin Johns talks about pegging.
Some things we can do, some things we can't. Okay.
That was low hanging fruit.
If the same team commits a targeting violation, the offending player will be fined a minimum of $5,000 and the match will be forfeited, resulting in a loss for the offending team. You got to be a psycho to do it again. You know, I mean, you got to be really pissed. If that ever happens, it'll be good content. If the opposing team retaliates and commits a targeting violation, technical foul and point penalty will be enforced, and the offending player will be subject to a mandatory minimum fine of $5,000 or more. Point penalty. Okay, so there is a point penalty. So now, like, the team who was targeted faces the consequences of being targeted. Now that, like, threshold has or I guess lowered, and if you retaliate, you're just as susceptible to a point penalty and a fine, a greater fine than you would have been. So that's interesting to me. At this point,
That's
another warning
unfortunate.
will be
You gotta get a chance to get back at
Yeah,
him.
yeah,
Give him
right,
one,
right.
right? Like
Yeah.
in baseball, all right, somebody gets plunked, the other team got a chance to respond, and then there's warnings, right?
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
come on.
Yeah. And also, that's a great aspect of the game. We need more of that, not less.
Yeah, but
At this
baseball, there is actually that code, right? Like they hit each other, but even when you're hitting people, you're not supposed to go up high. Yes, it is a baseball. Yes, it's going 95 miles per hour, but like
Yeah.
the code is you peg somebody in the torso, right?
Yeah, but
Like you're not
sometimes
going.
you see they throw, like, a changeup at the head. So it's like you're giving the player, unless they're a moron, the opportunity to dive out of the way or dodge it, but you're still delivering your point. You're still making the statement, right?
Sure.
If you throw a fastball at the head, we're brawling. And that's the best baseball content. At this point, another warning will be made by the officials. If there's another targeting violation, which again, this would be insane if it got to this point. The only match I can think of is you and Erik versus Tyson and was it Deckel?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only, but you guys were
None of those
having a little bit
should,
of fun.
if any of those were called targeting, this rule is horrible, absolutely horrible. So like I think that this rule should apply to two instances that I can think of. It would have been Ben, and I also think we should call these rules what they are. I feel like we need to start naming rules like in a fun way. I think this rule should be called the Ben Johns attempted to murder Kwang Dong rule.
And we just say the whole thing every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you imagine Don Stanley out there like, no. rule Ben Johns attempted to murder Kwang Dong.
Yeah. Right.
But there's two instances that I think would actually fall under this rule if it's interpreted the way that I hope it is, which is Ben against Kwang and then Jay against Ignatowicz from whatever that was back at MLP. Hayden tagging Andrei, fine. Anna Lee tagging Jay, fine. Like fine as in like that's okay, not as in fine them. That match that we played, like I don't think anybody got hit even like upper chest. Like there were plenty of bags. We were like ripping at each other, but we weren't headhunting. Very, very different.
Okay.
And that was a great match. I feel like that was most people's like favorite match of last year.
Yeah. There are a few matches where I can like think back to multiple points, like let alone like name the players and where it was, right? Like that was a memorable match and it was a fun one. And I don't know, figure out ways to make that happen more, not reduce it. But yeah, so if you were to do it a third time, so you're like full psycho mode, you actually forfeit the match. And then there's which is there anything else in pickleball where like if you do it forfeited?
Not that I know of.
Yeah. Maybe I mean, what if you just you go like after first game, go to shake hands, and somebody just throws a sucker punch.
Well,
Worth it?
yeah, I'd assume that
Worth it?
that's I'd assume that match is over.
Yeah, I don't. Is that in the rule book? Like, if I read USA Pickleball's rules, is it like if
It
you
probably
punch or physically assault somebody, like
it probably
match forfeited?
falls under some sort of tournament director discretion on that. Like the tournament director can kick you
Yeah,
out for bad behavior.
right. Yeah, so if you swing and miss, it's like whoa, but play on. If you
Yeah.
if you make contact, game. That's it. Forfeit.
Here's the thing, Thomas, though, like 3 times in one match, that's never gonna happen. This rule is never gonna be enforced. Or maybe some referee makes a bad call, but I would bet a good chunk of money nobody is ever fined for this.
Hmm. Yeah, and I just want to reiterate it does not remove it from the game. There's just a little fine and like a point. So it's not like they've eliminated targeting, which when I first read this is what I thought they were trying to do.
Yeah, but it deters. Like you can't really there's a lot of things that you can't eliminate. You can't eliminate cheating, but you can attempt to deter it. And you
Mhm.
know, I've got a segment coming out on that on Monday. So you can look forward to that. Set your post notifications.
Cool. um, all right, let's see. I do have other topics, but we got things to do today, Zane. Can we talk a little bit about this shoe deal you've got? Are you the first player to help actually like design a pickleball shoe? I was trying to think if I've heard that before. I mean, maybe in the background, like players were providing input, but it's never been like, yes, X player helped design a pickleball shoe. So
Yeah.
Squares, known for golf and baseball shoes specifically, are now coming into pickleball. They've released their new shoe, which we've seen a lot of brands transition into pickleball and basically just repurpose like a tennis shoe and throw the word pickleball on it. It's like, well, is it really a pickleball shoe? No. These guys seem to be taking it very seriously. They've teamed up with you. You helped in the design process. But can you just talk a little bit about like, okay, you're chatting with this design team. What are some of the things that you're like, okay, we got to have this, right? Like what really matters in a pickleball shoe? I've always been curious about that.
Yeah, so I got them right here. They're a little, probably a little bit dirty since I've played with them here in Mesa yesterday. Um, so first thing is going to be like the thing that they're known for is the square toe box, right? And so this makes it so that your toes aren't all squished in there. Have you ever seen pictures of like tennis player feet? I feel like they're uniquely disgusting because our toes are just jammed in there, and I don't really know why that is. Like, why don't these shoes have like a little bit larger space to have your toes be able to like move around independently? For me, when I put these on, it feels like I can grip the ground a little bit better. So um that's one of them, but that's not unique to pickleball for squares, right? They do that in baseball, they do that in golf, and now pickleball as well. But you know, slapping pickleball on a tennis shoe, I think doesn't necessarily do justice to the movement patterns of pickleball. So I think pickleball is a good amount more lateral movement, or at least higher percentage of lateral movement than like a tennis. In tennis, if you're chasing down a ball, you kind of turn and you go to it, and then you shuffle back into position. Um, like pickleball, I do think that you have a maybe higher percentage of lateral movement. So we put on these like almost teeth looking things on the side here so that you
Hmm.
have a little bit more stability when you're stepping out wide. And then we also like reinforced the middle section here. So this is basically like the highest impact point in pickleball. You're on your toes while you're at the kitchen if you're playing this game correctly. So we've got a little bit more like reinforcement in this position, and then a little bit more padding on the inside of the shoe around there as well. So last but not least, as you can see, these shoes are a tiny bit dirty because I impacted the the ground in this position, right? Like, so there's a lot of actual impact between the ground and the shoe around the front here. So we've got an extra layer of coating around the front so that we're not wearing holes in those shoes as well. So there's a few different elements of this shoe that I really like and really wanted to have and didn't feel like Squares had coming from baseball or golf, and even things that weren't yet in pickleball as well. So yeah, I've been stoked about it.
Does it just like personal standpoint, does it feel cool to like be like, yeah, I designed a pickleball shoe?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm stoked about it. But the cool part was, the really, really cool part is like Squares, they have a huge reach and a huge following, but like it is a small company. So legitimately, I would go play with these shoes for a few days, and then I'd call up Bob, who runs the company, founded the company. I'd be like,
Yeah.
Bob, we need to do X, Y, or Z. And he's like, I'm on it, Zane. And he'd have another prototype paired to me in like 3 weeks. And so it was super cool, like being on the phone with the head of Squares every couple of weeks to like give him my feedback on the shoes. And it was awesome because they had obviously established a really good company, but they had no ego whatsoever when it came to like feedback. I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people are like, you point out things that need to be improved and they might take it personally. Bob was like, all right, sweet. What else? What else we got to do? How do we make this the best pickleball shoe we can? Like, he was always thanking me when I'd point something out that was wrong early on. He's like, oh, perfect. So glad we were able to catch this so we can make it better. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll say a lot of the pickleball shoes too wouldn't be caught dead in them. These are pretty cool, and the photo shoot was good. Saw our boy Carlos in there.
Yeah. No, we went and did it at Sage Hill over in Austin area. Love that place, and they did it right. So if they can make me and Carlos look good, that marketing team probably deserves a raise.
Yeah, I went to the website, just the squaresgolf.com website, and just for the whole site, the whole company, big picture of Zane.
Yeah, well,
Right on the
that's
homepage.
pretty sweet, and it's cool that they were able to bring it to market with ProXR as the partner as well. So it's a fun partnership. ProXR obviously continuing to do a whole bunch of stuff within pickleball, rocking some new Move clothing here in Mesa as well, which you guys are the Dink is affiliated with as well. So yeah, lots of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, I need a fresh outfit of all the new Move gear.
The new
And
Move
by the way,
stuff is good.
if you're trying to find these brands, they both they're spelled uniquely. So it's SQAIRZ is Squares, and then Move is MUEV. So you can check them out. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So how long have you been playing in the Square shoes?
So I started playing with them in tournaments this year, but I would say I've probably been outside of tournaments. I've probably been in and out of Square's shoes for 9 months at this point, just from prototypes to prototype. And then after the season ended, I was just in them the whole time.
Cool. Okay. And we'll wrap here in a second. One thing I do want to do, I want to find the best player in New York City. So if there's anybody in New York City who's listening to this right now and you think you know who that is, I need you to DM us and give us the name. I've already got a few names. There's some whispers of certain players, but I want to find the best pickleball player in New York City. And some people have reputation. I need to see it in person. This is also just me sourcing good games for myself. But I think we're gonna create a little bit of content around it. And going back to what we said about like how long would it take to turn an XD1 athlete from scratch into a pro, or like get him through a quali. I want to entertain the idea of doing the same thing with a male player. So we need a good starting point though, because we want to make it happen fast.
So do you want best currently, or like, hey, look, I played I just finished playing pro tennis. Like, I'm your guy, or either or.
I want both. I want somebody from scratch, but then I also it's like sort of a two-parter. I want to find somebody who we can convert from scratch, whether that's a male or female. We'll think about both. But then I also just want to know, like, who is the best player in New York City, right? Before long, just the amount of like pickleball that's being played around here. Before long, New York City is going to be one of those markets. I do think so. I just think like the talent the density of people, the amount of good athletes in the area, and the way pickleball has grown and the momentum behind it in New York, I think soon it's going to be one of the hotbeds. It's just a matter of time. So maybe
Yeah,
we can
I'd agree with that.
help.
Kind of weird that the Northwest, the Northeast was kind of the last to adopt it. But yeah, there shouldn't be a real reason why New York wouldn't have a great community. So start it up, Tommy.
I will. I went and played at Gotham Pickleball here it's in like Brooklyn, Long Island City, and I played with, I don't know, it was like 8 people. Met 2 of them for the first time, but then as I was playing on their team, like 2 of these guys, like midpoint, we're partners. They turned to me and they're like, "Yeah, I was just listening to the Collin episode." I'm like, "Oh, so you do like you just met each other, like you have no idea who I am or listen to the podcast or anything, and then you're like, oh, love the most recent episode." It's like, that's cool. It's cool.
Nice.
I like it. All right, sweet. I think that's all we got for this one. We'll I think throw this on. So if you do watch this episode, we're gonna transition to what we recorded earlier this week. So we'll talk about like the Freeman stuff and some other things. And so this will serve as like an update to that. And then we've
I
got
feel like we
interviews.
talked about a lot, but
Yeah,
I
we've
can't
covered a
remember
lot.
exactly what we talked about.
It was gonna be a Joe Rogan like 2-hour plus episode with a few different interviews, a few different personalities coming in. So should be cool.
Strap in.
Yeah,
up,
we want to start there.
Yeah,
What's
yeah. I
up,
mean,
what?
well, what's up with the hair? I mean, actually, we posted a picture of you recently, and I almost screenshotted it just to bring it up on the pod. It's like hair looks phenomenal.
Do you think so? It's
Yeah.
very polarizing. It's very, very polarizing. So the best comment that I've seen so far about the hair was some person commented, Zane looks like a crackhead that recovered and is now growing out the dad hair to try and fit in with society or something like that. I was like, that's way too much
Yeah.
thought
Just
into that.
trying too
But
hard.
kind of trying a little bit too hard. I thought it was funny. But yeah, you know what? I'm growing out the flow. I haven't had long hair since like middle school. When I thought it was really cool to look like Harry Potter. And we're doing it again. So, yeah, I can't wait for the comments on this one.
Hold on. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. This. I mean, look at that hair.
You know, I honestly don't even know how I feel about it. Like I like it's just less maintenance when the hair is short, but Jenny's
Yeah.
got a vision.
She's they call that something. So she's gonna put her feminine touch in and get you start dressing right, get your hair right. Yeah, improve the image.
Yeah, I need to have a glow up at some point.
Yeah, glow up.
A glow up.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Tell
Yeah.
Jenny I give her tips if she needs any input. Happy to help.
Yeah, you've had the long hair for a little bit, haven't you? But you kind of cut it though, huh?
I just let it grow until I'm like, all right, this is annoying, and then I cut it pretty short, and the cycle repeats. Easiest way to do it. Yeah. Okay. What kind of topics we want to run through? Did you have something on the girlies merch?
Oh no, I'm just rocking the girlies merch. They sold out in like within the first day. I think I forgot how many pieces they had, but it's Jenny approved too. She was like, they actually made good quality of merch instead of a lot of these companies will kind of like the actual fabric quality isn't great. This thing is thick. They
All right,
also
I'm
sent me
gonna.
like an XL, so I don't know what that says about me. Maybe they think I'll grow into it, but yeah, it's a good oversized sweatshirt. It does look cool. I like it.
You just have cheating on the sheet here. So what are we talking about?
Well, should we?
Cheating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had a bunch of different. I had a bunch of different topics, but cheating. I've just been like thinking about it.
Think
And
about doing more
you
of
know,
it.
well, so here's the thing. If I was playing this game, I like optimally, I would cheat every single time because there is no repercussion. We've talked about this before, right? And
Mhm.
so for some reason this weekend in Tucson, it felt slight like there was more animosity this week, right? Like we've talked for a while too about the kumbaya era of pickleball is over. Well, we may have been in a purgatory between kumbaya and like active dislike among players. The tournament felt weird this weekend. It felt like a little angry.
Mm.
There were a bunch of different matches that had like beefs and whatnot, or bad line calls, or like chirping back and forth, that type of stuff. Hard to describe, but it felt less friendly than ever before. It got me thinking about cheating and what we can do about it. Um, I don't want to spoil everything, but I'm writing another letter about cheating.
Do
I
you
think we just
think
have
it?
to. Oh, go
Do you
ahead.
think it's like more prevalent than it was, or do you think it's just reaching a point of exhaustion where it's like same old, nothing's improved, and it's just kind of at a boiling point? Or do you feel like people are just cheating more?
I do think it's going to continue to get worse, right? Because the more you've been cheated, the more likely you are to cheat. I think being cheated consistently makes you feel like you're playing by a different standard, right? It makes you feel like you're playing by different rules. Well, if everybody else is cheating, right? This is almost like the Lance Armstrong argument. If everybody else is
Hmm.
cheating, what am I supposed to do? I have to cheat to even be even with them, right?
Hmm.
I feel like that mode of thinking is probably getting more and more prevalent on the pro tour. And so this is not a call out of any specific player by any means. Like I do not want that to be misconstrued in that way. This is just generally my thoughts on cheating. When somebody's cheated you, the next time you play them and you've got a call at 10-10 in the third, they cheated you in the last match. Like, and let's say you're just not even sure. Are you going to give them the benefit of the doubt on that call? Like, maybe you would have if you didn't think they were cheating you before, but now you're not. Like, so the line calls are continuing to get tighter. And the biggest problem is there's not a single deterrent. We kind of thought that the sorry, not sorry hook of the week would be a bit of a deterrent. It doesn't really seem to be, right? Like, people get called out, but the excuse is, you know, everybody misses calls and everybody does miss calls. But if that's true and you are somebody that just has bad vision, let's say you have horrible vision. Well, you should be cheating yourself just as much as you're cheating your opponent. I believe you when you make a bad call against me if you've also made bad calls against yourself. To me, I have a hard time with the argument of everybody misses calls when the calls are only missed in one direction consistently, right? Like, what are the odds of that?
Yeah. I do think that, okay, so if you are like, if you're being a smart player, you're always going to err on the side of the call that favors you if it's ever in question. To do anything otherwise is to your disadvantage. When you average that out, you're going to be giving calls away, right? And there are times, especially if there's a hands battle at the net or there's a big put away, where you don't turn around fast enough to see where the ball went. In those instances, you don't know. The ball could have been in, it could have been out, But why would you make a call that favors the opponent if you don't know either way? You might as well err on the side of a call in your favor, right? So that's not necessarily cheating. It's kind of just being smart, because those situations are going to happen. When they happen at a higher volume, you might as well make the calls in your favor.
I would consider that cheating if you didn't see the ball and you call it out. Like, I do think I think that you have to see the ball out to call the ball out. And I think if you don't I think if you don't see the ball out, it's in. Um Even if you don't see the ball at all, you have to see the ball out to call it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if it's a ball that you just don't see and you call it out, I think you could theoretically be cheating even if the ball landed out.
Do you think any of it is a byproduct of faster balls, harder hitting paddles, and just like that? It's a hotter ball right now, and that means the ball's moving faster. You're just going to miss more calls because it's just hard to see in real time.
I mean, theoretically, yes, right? Like the ball is moving faster. People should miss more calls. But again, it seems to be all in one direction. It seems to be favoring yourself. So yeah, it would make sense if the ball is traveling way faster, there's going to be more missed calls. But it still seems like most of these missed calls, if not all of these missed calls, are in favor of yourself. So if it was really a problem with tracking the ball because it's going so fast, you should cheat yourself as much as you're cheating your opponent.
Yeah, that's just naive to think that's going to happen, though.
No, I agree, which is why I think we need more deterrence. So
Mhm.
college tennis or junior tennis has an escalating scale. The first time that you are overruled by an umpire is a warning. The second time is a point penalty. The third time is a game penalty. The fourth time is a match penalty, right? Right now, the first time you hook, nothing happens. The second time you hook, nothing happens. The third time you hook, nothing happens. The 100th time you hook, nothing happens. You get publicly shamed, but some people don't care anymore, right?
Mhm.
There definitely needs to be an escalating penalty that probably carries over from match to match as well. We need more deterrence. That's the main thing. Um, by the time this goes out, I have a tweet thread up. I've got or a letter, whatever you want to call it. I have some more in depth uh, analysis of this, but
Are you going to bring up any specific instances?
of cheating.
Yeah, and specific players.
No, I'm not. This is not a this is a systematic problem, and like it's going to occur regardless of what players have or haven't been cheating. So I don't feel a need to call out any specific player on this one.
I think I just realized that there's a difference between the word systematic and systemic. I think you want systemic in this instance. Is that correct?
Hmm, maybe.
Yeah, I never realized that until you just said that.
Yeah, there is a difference, I think.
Yeah, there's a vocab lesson of the day. Well, Jay DeVilliers commented, and I'm only seeing the screenshot, so it looks like it's a memes of pickleball post. Uh, Jay DeVilliers comments, and it was a clip of the match between him and Pat Smith versus Rafa and Cleef. Kind of escalated throughout the match. There were some nasty Nelson attempts. There was some animosity, as you were alluding to earlier. But Jay took to Instagram on memes of pickleball. Great performance from Noe. Did I say that right? Noe and Rafa. They played very well and deserved the win. Nice. Way to be a gentleman before you call them out. That being said, it is just very sad, in my opinion, that it's always the same players that make those bad calls and no repercussions happen. If it was the first time it happened, it would be one thing. Mistakes happen, and I've been on that end as well. But when it happens on multiple occasions with several teams/players, then it becomes a problem. It deteriorates the credibility of our beautiful sport and encourages poor sportsmanship.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jay is correct. The more it happens, the more the more it does deteriorate kind of like the like entire culture of the tour. I don't know that match specifically. Like, I heard about it. I saw the memes of pickleball post, which was kind of funny because Jay went for a nasty Nelson, and the ref was commenting on that as well. But like, yeah, I can't speak to whether there were any other calls. I think it looked like Rafa made a bad call or missed a call, whatever, in that sequence. I don't know if there was any other context on top of it. I don't know. I don't know whether that was a missed call. I don't know whether it was a cheat. So, um, without context, or without watching that whole match, I'm not going to label that as a cheat or a missed call or what. But
Fed replied and says, honestly, not the player's fault. The league needs to figure it out. Needs to figure out a way to not have players calling lines, parentheses, like all professional sports.
see, I like. We've done that before. Like, we've had line judges calling lines, and it was worse than anything ever. Our referees aren't good enough right now, and it's not necessarily their fault, right? Like, they're not paid. They don't pay enough to get like extremely high quality professional referees. These people are barely more than volunteers. So, like, in theory, yes, I agree with Fed. Like, it would be great if we could have 6 professional line judges on every court, but like, in Tucson, we were at a shortage of referees with 1 per court. Like, that's just not a realistic answer at this point. Like,
Mhm.
and so I think until that does become a realistic answer, where we can have good trained line judges on every line, or positioned in the best way to see the ball, which is probably uh uh opposite of the line or at a 90-degree angle to the line, like, we need to figure out a way to deter cheating in the meantime. And I think that escalating penalties, potential fines, I think you should be able to go back and review a match that happens on stream when the referee is sitting there and they're watching the kitchen and there's an egregious hook. I should be able to say, hey, look, Thomas hooked me in this match. Go review the film, and that should have some sort of a fine or some sort of escalating penalty from the PPA, because the only way to prevent cheating at this point is deterrence, and currently there is zero deterrence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The general of Hook of the Week himself, Chris Calley, replied, and so this ended up like what I just read was from Instagram. It was screenshotted by Johnny 5.0, brought to X, where conversation ensued. Chris Calley replied and said, LMAO, Fed saying it's not player's fault is funny as hell. I like him, but he's constantly hooking. Fed replied to Chris, when the balls fly 50 to 60 miles per hour right past you while you are running forward, sometimes it's tough to see clear where the ball is bouncing. I had never made a call knowing it was actually cheating. I made mistakes, sure, but I have never tried to actually hook someone. So, I mean, I feel like that's just the sentiment amongst all players. And whether Fed is somebody who hooks consistently or not, whether these other players are, that seems to be the general sentiment. Like, what do you want me to do? I'm never trying to make those bad calls. Just the ball moves fast.
Yeah, but every single player is going to make that argument, whether they're a hook or
Yeah.
not, right?
Yeah.
So I think you have to look at, again, I think the only way you can judge, there's not a player on the tour that hasn't hooked their opponent at some point by accident, right? There's not a single player on tour that hasn't made a bad call that's benefited themselves, right? There are players that do it far, 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 far more than others. And to me, the way that I judge whether somebody is a cheater or whether somebody misses calls is, do they cheat themselves as much as they cheat their opponent?
Yeah.
That's gonna be the line of the podcast.
So I've been playing at this place called Gotham Pickleball in Brooklyn here in New York. Been playing with Eric over at New York City Pickleball, and they have pod play set up in the facility. And there's buttons that are on either baseline and at the net. And basically, you can like hit the button and do an instant replay. And we use it all the time. Like the 3 to 4 times I've gone over there to play, we've used it like every game. If there's a questionable call, it's never like a contentious thing. It's like, I think I saw it one way, but hey, there's a review system, instant replay. Like, let's go hit the button. We'll find out. Like, there's no reason to leave it up to question. Why can't they have the PBA tour? I feel like that's a pretty straightforward solution. And Podplay has like the infrastructure and the tech to do it with like relatively cost-effective equipment. You guys go
Are
like
those
the ref has to
replays
hit what?
are those replays better than the replays that we have on center court? Or
They
is it just like it's a regular camera basically?
it's a regular camera. It's nothing like it's not like super high quality, but like it's done the job every time we even counted it.
So it'll catch like egregious hooks, but like you probably can't really tell most balls where they're landing within an inch or two.
Yeah, I guess I've never seen one that's like super, super, super tough to tell. It's always been
Yeah, fair.
relatively obvious.
Yeah, and I
But
mean, like on some of these side courts, that's like better than nothing. You can catch the
yeah,
egregious hooks and deter.
isn't that the point? Like, okay, if there's close ones and there's close ones, then you there's no reason to like then it at least removes the bad actors who are just making the truly egregious calls. It's like, okay, you find out right then and there. If it's
It would
close, if
be
it's
an
really
improvement.
close, then it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, any video replay is an improvement and it's a deterrent. So, like, yeah, especially with the PPA streaming all of these courts, I think almost all of the courts were streamed this past week in Tucson. Like, we've got the video of it. Um, you know, maybe we could just have the ref actually go take a look at it. With the understanding, like, hey, look, the challenge system on this court is only going to catch the most egregious hooks.
I mean, they hold those iPads. Why can't they just have the stream like on another tab? And if they have
Bro,
to,
they
they pull up the
barely
stream.
use those iPads.
Do a training session or something. What do you think about Nasty Nelsons in an instance of like legit anger, like an actual like malicious Nasty Nelson versus like it's funny?
Yeah, you know,
If someone
um,
ever did that to me, I'd be like, this guy's a psychopath. Like, what is this guy's problem?
that's tough. I don't know. What do you think?
I think if you're like legitimately angry and you're like, I'm gonna just smoke the ball at somebody, that's kind of a wild move. I mean, I love to see it. It's entertaining. But Nasty Nelson should be reserved for like basically the way you've done it, like against like Neil Metarata, right? And there can be a little bit of like F you in the moment, but ultimately it's like everybody laughs. If it's not like funny to if it's not like a funny moment and it's just straight malicious, that seems odd.
Yeah, I guess I don't really know if we can get into like intent. You're never really going to know what's going on in somebody's head. Like there's the clear examples of like if you're doing it with your buddy in rec play, like yeah, that's funny. I would say for me, like the clear thing is like I don't really care if people are nasty Nelsoning. Like just as long as it's not like high, right? That's really the only thing that I care about, and it goes back to our discussion about pegging with Collin. Like hitting people is fine as long as you can keep it away, like below the shoulders. Like I don't I don't really care if you hate the person and want to hit them, like or if they're your best friend and you want to hit them for that reason. Like as long as you're keeping it below, I think the shoulders, like I'm fine with it. But yeah, I mean, like you know, Jay's on Rafa was like that was clearly like an angry one, that's for sure. And he
Yeah.
smoked that. I don't know how that missed Rafa.
Um, yeah, I mean, I like it. I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, it gives
I
us
like it.
something to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. All right,
Oh,
let's actually like so our pod when we had Colin on, do you think we were a little too much of like old guard, like who's this new kid on the block with bad behavior? Like, do you think we were too much on that side of the fence?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about that pod a little bit, and the only thing that I think I should have added would have been that in that match between Ben and Collin and Kwong and CJ, or sorry, Kwong and Matt, I didn't see Kwong start it. I
Right.
don't know I don't know the lore. I don't know if he was headhunting some other time. I haven't really seen that. I've seen him go hard body. I think I should have added that to the conversation. But I think overall Colin's assessment of like pegging is different than headhunting.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair assessment. Headhunting, I think, is completely frowned upon. uh Hitting hard body, like even what Hayden did to Andre. Do you see that shot this past weekend?
Mm-mm.
Oh my god, Hayden almost ended Andre's life. Hayden murdered the ball at Andre. It was one of the biggest bags I've seen, but it like hit him in like the upper chest, like shoulder area, right? Like I don't really think anybody thought much of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sure, he clobbered the ball, but like if it was 6 inches higher and if it was like passing above his shoulder, like I feel like that's egregious. Like that's brutal. Um, so I think there's very much a difference. I don't know. What do you think? We're reflecting from the Colin pod a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think Colin's explanation of and Ben's explanation of why he did it, like when you go back and actually watch the lead up to it, like their explanation didn't make a ton of sense. I think like overall, I get it. I get the frustration. I could just understand like Kwong just like grunting over and over again and like playing aggressive. Like I could get where that would frustrate you, and then you go and like try and bag him. But to say that it was a retaliation to Kwong's like repeated attempts at bagging and like trying to bag him high, like I just don't think that that happened. So um but I hadn't watched enough of the lead up to that moment to really have like recognized whether or not that explanation really like fit the bill in that
Yeah.
moment.
Well, I mean, that's what I did. I watched that match. Like there were I think body attacks. I didn't think there was any shot that Kwong hit that wasn't intended to go into the court. We'll put it that
Mhm.
way. Like some of them might have missed. They all looked like they were intended to go in the court. Some of them were right at the body, but it looked like they were intended to be in, right? When you're going for a full bag on somebody, you're not intending to keep it in. So like in that match, I didn't see anything egregious.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't go back and watch all matches that Kwong has played against Ben and Colin. So,
Mhm. Um, okay, let's see.
but yeah, it's transitioning. It's got to be frustrating for Ben because he got dropped by his partner. You see that?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
getting dropped, man. Ben's getting
Um,
dropped by Max Freeman.
yeah, let's bring up Max's response to that. So I did think it was interesting. Yeah, I thought it was funny just to do the headline of like, you know, up and comer says I don't want to play with Ben, right? Like writing it that way was kind of funny, but like it had to do with the contract structures. And so basically we had tweeted Ben and Hayden get upset in the semis and one of Ben's future partners, quote, drops him. It's probably not who you think. Check out the latest news. And it's a whole article about how Max Freeman hasn't signed his contract with the UPA. So he can't play in the main draw. He had a roster of like really solid partners, including like Ben, Leia, a bunch of others. And because of him not thinking that the terms of his deal were suitable to what he wanted to do, he didn't want to sign the agreement. That means he has to forfeit all of these great partnerships, which, in his opinion, let me just read what he said in response to this. This is not about the money. I just played my first BPA in June. Why do I have to sign a 3-year contract to play with my friends? For those that don't know, most top player contracts end in 2 years. It just makes no sense for me to agree to this.
Yeah, I mean, like financially, that's tough. Especially, I mean, like if it was going to be you're penciled in with Ben for a year, I feel like just reputationally and like sponsorships wise, it could be worth it. But financially, for an up and coming player, unless your deal is like highly incentive structured, and I don't know what these deals really look like, you know, he's only getting better. Why would he want to lock into something right now when his best results are yet to come? So I mean,
Yeah.
like for an up and comer, I understand it. What are your thoughts, Tommy?
Even if the deal was really good, if I'm him, I don't know what my upside is going to be, right? Nobody does. Unless you're pricing in the peak potential upside into that agreement, then you don't sign it, right? It just wouldn't make sense for you as a player.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of agree with some of that logic. I don't know the numbers that are getting thrown around here for up and coming players. I mean, obviously with the expansion to 6 players per team, like UPA is in need of good talent, but you can't pay everybody millions of dollars, right? Like that well is somewhat dry with the commitments that
Mhm.
they already have to the existing players, right? Um yeah, I get it. Like it's just you got to bet on yourself. Everybody's been in that position at some point or another. Um he's betting on himself. It sucks that like you've had such a good partner lined up because that would be a you know you would have to imagine that they'd be favorites to win PPA tournaments.
Yeah,
That part's
and then he
unfortunate.
wins, and then if like let's just say he wins one with Ben, okay, his personal equity as a player just increased like tenfold, right?
Yeah, I
So
think the problem is the new rule that the UPA put out, which is once you reach the top 50, you're in rankings and anything, you're eligible to sign a contract with them. But if you don't sign a contract with them, then you can't play. So like if you're ranked number 40, you just and you don't sign a contract, you just can't play. Which is seems
yeah,
like the boat that Max is in. So
right.
he
All
like
right. So
literally he
we
can't. He has no choice. Like it'd be one thing if he could play and just not make any money with Ben. Like he actually just can't play.
yeah. Um should have definitely clarified that. I was sort of speaking under the assumption that everybody is fully aware of this. It is a little bit confusing. But basically, and I'm reading from Erik Tice's article uh, on the Dink website. Um, he says essentially it boils down to this: a player in the top 50 of PPA points cannot play qualifiers. Any player who is not a signed UPA player has to play qualifiers. So therein lies the conflict. That forced Max to, I mean, he basically had to make the decision, sign the contract and play with this. And you get the partnerships that you want. You commit to the PPA for 3 years, UPA for 3 years, or you don't. And now you can't play the main draw with, and these are the partners he had lined up: Ben for one tournament, Dylan for one tournament, Tyson McGuffin for 2, James Ignatowicz for multiple, Leah Jansen for 2, Tyra Black for 4. That's really
It's
for
not a bad roster.
yeah, and for a player of, you know, his experience, like that's a dream roster of partners is you try and climb the ranks in pro pickleball, right? Like
Yeah, I
playing
mean
with that roster like changes your career.
you would have to think that he'd be in the hunt for medals in those events more or less every time.
Hmm. Right. So it's like, okay, without, okay, now that, so now he's not gonna have the best, like solid partners that are going to give him a chance to ascend and medal in PPA events. Now he's got to fight through qualifiers with lesser established players, and he's got to hope for some great high upside outcome. Or he commits to the PPA for 3 years, but now he caps what he could have made, the agreement he could get in the future, assuming some degree of success,
to commit to these players. But let's just say, okay, for that, like, say Ben was the first tournament he was going to play with. After he signs an agreement, he wins gold with Ben. Now all of a sudden he's worth way more. And so that contract immediately becomes a bad deal. It's a complicated situation. What I will say is, like, the UPA should be doing this. The players aren't always going to get the best deals, but like, if I'm the UPA as a business, I want to monopolize talent. I want to create environments where the best players are going to sign. They're going to play in MLP. They're going to play in PPA. I want to lock them in. I want to create great terms for us as a company, right? I want to make sure we're not overspending, which they've done after the tour wars. I want those contracts to come back down to earth for new players. Hey, you want to come play in our tournament? You need to sign this deal according to the terms that are friendly to us. I get it. I just think it's sort of convoluted in these weird rules versus just being open. Like, yeah, you want to come play with the best? You got to sign with us.
Yeah, I mean, like the qualifying 50s, like that's just a way. That's a strange way of just being like, if you don't sign with us and you're a good player, you can't play.
Yeah.
Like why not? Let's be transparent about what exactly that is, rather than trying to sort of like seemingly like hide it. But on the same token, like I think that there should be some very low floor, high incentive contracts rather than the high floor, zero incentive contracts that we currently have.
Mhm.
But until these current contracts with guarantees come off the books, like it's just probably very hard for them to justify really wanting to spend much money on players. Like I understand it from the PPA side as well. Like, yeah, you want to have the best talent, but like we don't have that much more money to spend, right? Or maybe we do, we don't want to though, right? Like,
Mhm.
all right, go
And
crush it at the APP Max, and when we restructure all of these contracts come 2027, like we'll make you something good that's highly incentive based.
yeah. Yeah, and you don't know what the conversations looked like between Max and the UPA. It's
Right.
possible that Max saw the agreement and was like, "I'm not signing this now." Whereas he should have negotiated, assuming he didn't, right? Maybe he did. He should have negotiated and said, "Okay, but I want a contingency. If I medal X amount of times, whatever that like benchmark is, right? After 1 year, I want us to be able to come back to the table and renegotiate the contract. But I'm exclusive to you until that point and through 3 years, but there needs to be some flexibility so that we can price in my upside so that I feel like I'm getting fairly compensated if I reach the level of success I think I can reach."
Yeah, I mean that makes complete sense to me. I think that is most likely the way that these contracts will end up eventually, right? We're still in a weird interim period where we have new talent coming in that is under a different structure than the old existing talent. And you're kind of comparing apples and oranges between the two of them. Max might be looking at somebody who's making $500,000 a year that he's already better than. Like, well, if he's comparing apples to oranges, he's never going to be happy with that comparison because PPA is not handing out those contracts anymore. There's no tour war right now.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Jack Sock.
That is a great headline though. Max Freeman drops Ben Johns, one of the better ones.
Mhm. Good article by Erik Tice. And you got Nasty Nelson by Jack Sock?
I did. Yeah, I can't believe nobody's nasty Nelson to me before this. I got hit, and that was the immediate thought. I was like, I deserved it. B, I can't believe nobody else has done this yet.
And you're one of the players who immediately is like, "All right, good job, like nice."
Yeah, I kind of I started laughing right away.
Yeah.
But he wasn't laughing, man. He was he wasn't particularly happy with me.
Do you guys have
Seemed
beef?
like apparently seems like it.
Would you tweet something errant at him on X on a
I don't think
random day?
I don't think I've ever. I don't know if I've ever tweeted about him.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically I think Jack, will initiate some shit talking, which I'm all for. But like, if you initiate, like, I'm absolutely going to engage.
Mhm.
I'm not somebody who's just gonna like sort of sit there, and I don't know if he particularly like cares about that. So the context for this one was we were winning. I think he hit a shot into the net. Um, Takes the ball and basically like rolls it around the net post and then taps it like an inch while me and Deckel are standing back at the baseline. And it was very petty. Um,
I love it.
and yeah, but like I'm ready to get down and dirty at any point. And so like I think I miss a shot next. I grab the ball and I say really loud, I hit the ball like right to Erik. I'm like, here you go, Erik. Here's the ball for you. Um, which is stupid. And then like I think we win the point. It's Jack serve and he just nails me. I did tell him, like, even at this point, I didn't have like any beef with Jack. After the match, I told him like, "Hey, nice shot," and he just walked away.
Dang.
So,
All right,
oh
Jack,
well.
come on the pod. Come on the pod. Come hang out.
Anytime.
We've tried to get him on the pod.
We have.
Yeah.
What do you think of? And did you see Anna Lee getting asked to prom?
No, I just saw this on the. I mean, did she go to
Dude,
high school? Like, what prom?
I think she's done with high school, but like it was some kid's prom in Tucson, Arizona, and she handled it really well. She's like, "Oh, I don't think I'll be around for that, but I would love to go to prom at some point." Um, which is like she handled it really really well, which would have been super awkward for most people to deal with that interaction. But yeah, that caught the headlines for Friday.
Yeah, I didn't catch that, but here's some examples. Kylie Jenner in 2017 went to a junior prom in Sacramento with somebody who was a big fan of hers. Khloe Kardashian, Taylor Swift, Rihanna, Vanessa Hudgens, Dwayne Wade, Shaun White, Juju Smith-Schuster. They all went to prom with fans. So
That's wild. I did ask Caroline Wozniacki to a dance while I was in high school. I'm still waiting to hear back.
I'm sure you'll get a response soon.
10 years later.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Maybe she'll end up going with somebody. See,
I think
I've
it'd be fun.
as somebody
It'd be
who
funny, like content, good headline.
as somebody who has like done a successful ridiculous promposal, I feel like the guy needed to just send it more, right? Like he
Yeah,
was a
didn't
little
know. I don't know
timid.
how he asked, but he needed to do something like
He
wild.
needed to do something more wild for sure, rather
Yeah,
than just a sign. Like, yeah, the more grandiose, the better. He
yeah.
kind of half sent.
You have to earn it. You have to earn it.
Yeah. So the other couple things that we have on here, you see, Pickleheads raised $2.5 million.
Yes.
How much?
64 investors.
64 investors.
I think
That's
that's
pretty
what I saw.
cool for a pickleball tech company to, and we don't know. I don't think we know how much of the company they sold. So they raised $2.5 million. That could have been for 1%. It could have been. I'm sure they probably didn't sell a majority
I'll tell you.
stake.
Let's
Oh,
see.
you have that info?
No, but there's usually like standard structures to a lot of stuff. Like if it was a safe or something, I know that they raised like a pre-seed a while back. Maybe 2 years ago, they raised a pre-seed, and I think it was like mid six-figure round, just under $1 million. So they've been building since, and then they went out and did like a formal seed with a pretty big number of investors, which seems to be the way things are moving these days. $2.5 million seed. I mean, it doesn't say anything about the contract terms, but like if it was a safe, which is kind of like the standard, it would be like they don't really determine the valuation until like they go and raise a Series A, which would be the next financing round. So it would be probably like a $6, $8, or $10 million cap valuation. So it could be that as the highest, or depending on their performance over the next few years, underneath that. So, yeah, I don't know if we've seen outside of the like. So I know Pod Play was raising a big round. They're probably the closest thing I can think of. Other than that, it's been like, Pickler facility stuff, Major League Pickleball teams, UPA, PPA. Like I don't think any like paddle brands have raised significant rounds.
At least, or haven't announced it publicly.
Yeah. But a lot of the investments in pickleball, it's like you go to your network, you go to wealthy individuals, you go to retirees who, have made their money and do some side investing, love pickleball and want to get in on the action, which I think is probably a lot of what this investment round was, just given the volume of investors, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it's good to see more companies like raising good money in pickleball, like justifying actual financing.
Yeah, there's a real appetite for people to put money into pickleball investments, right? I think a lot of these companies are.
When we
What?
were on, when we had Samin on, I can't find it, but I got an email from somebody saying, give me something pickleball to invest in. I can't sit on the sidelines anymore. I can't stand it. Just tell me where to put this $1 million. Just like out of the blue email. And it was like midnight on a Friday. It was like this guy clearly had some drinks at the bar and just like threw an email at me. Like,
I
what am
want in
gonna
on
do?
pickleball.
Yeah, just like tell me where to put my money. And I do think there are a lot of people who love pickleball. They got a little bit of cash. They want to invest in the space.
For sure. Should we just go real quick through Tucson?
If you want to run through that.
Tucson. Big story from singles was Tom upset Fed in the round of 32. We kind of talked about that one a little bit. Not a good debut for the Adidas paddle. Him and Catherine lost pretty early in mixed doubles as well. Only real strong results were from Rafa, who seems to be playing better with this paddle, but not not a great weekend there for Adidas, which is unfortunate because they spent a lot of money on players, getting the number one singles player in the world. Yeah, thoughts, Tommy?
Well, it was just Fed, right? I mean, Rafa seems like he did an okay job, and then Fed was the one that was. I mean, because he's who else do they have? Didn't they sign? They say Mari.
They've got Mari as well. Yeah. I think
Um,
they took a women's doubles, maybe a kind of an uncharacteristic women's doubles loss, but yeah, I mean, Fed was the big one, and he's obviously their sort of golden child at this point, or their highest profile player.
yeah, yeah. I think it's kind of like because who knows? Maybe just Fed had like a bad outing, and then it's like Adidas is so excited to have the number one player, expecting big things, and it's just like. It just so happens he has a bad weekend. And what else are people going to point to than the fact that number one happened to be playing with a new paddle? Maybe it was a paddle, maybe it wasn't. But yeah, it's like probably deflating for the Adidas crew. But like, I don't know, Fed hasn't indicated anything about it having to do with the paddle. Not that he would, but maybe you'd see like some subtweeting or maybe like a light suggestion in an interview or something like that.
It's too early for that. Too early for that.
Yeah. I mean, and it could just be I'm getting used to a new paddle, but he's been using it for a little bit, right?
I think I asked him, and it hasn't been too long for him. I mean, he used, I think he used Yola at the first tournament of the year. He used Yola at the Masters. So Masters being he couldn't have been playing with this paddle for much more than a month, not even a month. So yeah, it's obviously going to take some getting used to. Any of it is. Um, but Hunter Johnson won the PPA singles title, beat Christian Alshon in the final. So the singles draw was kind of wide open with no Ben, and then also Fed falling pretty early. So Hunter's playing well. Parris had a great run. She beat Leah Jansen, she beat Brooke Buckner, and then crushed Caitlin Christian, who's been playing very well. She crushed her 2 and 3 in the finals. On the same day as the Super Bowl ad. Did you see
Yeah.
the pickleball Super Bowl ad?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Big weekend for Hunter and Parris. They're probably feeling pretty good right now.
What'd you think of the Super Bowl ad?
I thought it was pretty cool. I really loved it. Was Jaume and who? Because I had seen the video, but it was like in the vertical version. So like the female was cut out, but I know it was a pro.
I think it was Emily Ackerman.
Yes, and they're just like bringing up the cooler. Like I love that. You know the little Leo DiCaprio meme where he's like pointing at the TV, like whistling. That's me.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's John. Like nobody knows who that is. Yeah, it was cool.
I think it was cool to have the athletes in there, but
Yeah.
I still feel like the actual content of the ad wasn't flattering for pickleball. Like
It
it
never is.
was well, yeah, it never is. I was hoping eventually for something different, right?
Pickleball, like okay. There. Anytime you watch a movie about sports, 90% of the time it's very clear that that actor like just never played that sport. You can just tell by the mechanics of how they move, how they like throw the ball or whatever. In pickleball, it seems like that's just inflated. It's just so obvious. And like if you don't have the right swing mechanics, like you just look awkward playing pickleball. So it inherently looks goofy. So we're fighting an uphill battle. At least it was on TV.
Fair. Anyway, back to Tucson. Andrei and Alshon took out Ben and Hayden. Ben and Hayden's first time playing together. It took them out in three games. What do you think?
I mean, was that surprising to you?
I think that slightly, to be honest. I mean, like I really do think that Andrei and Christian are a very, very good team. Andrei on the left and then Christian playing a big right. It's like where do you hit against that team? But I did think that hand speed wise, Hayden and Ben, I would have put Hayden and Ben as the favorite in that match, but I'm not
Yeah.
incredibly surprised.
Yeah, I think it's partially a case of like Alshon and Andre, like kind of nothing to lose, whereas the pressure was on Ben and Hayden, especially Ben, to come out and perform well and show he's the top dog. So I feel like that always works in the underdog's favor. Not that they were like significant underdogs, but you know the pressure was on Ben and Hayden to win.
Yeah, and especially they're a new. It's always tougher when you don't have that comfort level with your partner yet. When it's a
Yeah,
pressure moment and you like have a little bit of hesitation of who's taking the middle, like that hesitation is going to be like even larger in those pressure moments. So, um,
it does
not
just
like a
feel weird to see like Ben and Hayden play with each other. It
it
just
kind of does.
feels weird.
For some reason, Ben and Gabe feels more right.
Hmm.
Like it'll be weird when we see that, but like Hayden and Ben feel strange.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know. How many more? Do
Um,
you have any idea how many more times they're going to play together?
I have honestly no idea. I think Ben's with Gabe. I think we see the Ben and Gabe combo this week in Mesa, I believe.
You you feel like they'll play together better, like better chance, and plus that initial pressure is off. Um, And I assume they've been training together. So Ben did move down to Florida, right?
He did. Yep.
So he ditched Austin probably because I left. Now he's down
That's
in
just what I was thinking.
yeah. So they'll be like practicing and playing together all the time.
Yeah. Well, Tommy, you don't subscribe to my YouTube channel. I made a whole video on breaking down Ben and Gabe and how I think they're going to play together. But like, I do think that on paper they have very complementary styles. I'm excited to see it because I do think that Gabe is one of the most exciting men's doubles players to watch because he's just is like plays so dynamic and so aggressively. So that'll be interesting to watch. I'm excited to check some of that out.
Yeah. Any other big takeaways besides Jack Sock, Nasty Nelson?
Only other thing was Christian's playing well. All 3 finals. He lost 2 of the 3, but he made it at all 3 finals. So good tournament for him. And the girlies unfortunately got an absolute beat down on ESPN2. You hate to see it, but Anna Lee and Catherine were they were just clean. They were very, very clean in that match.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it for Tucson. Tommy, let's try one more quick thing. This will be a fun one. All right. Have you seen any of these videos where you do blind rankings?
I mean, you showed me like a cheeseburger one.
Yeah, a cheeseburger one. Yep. So blind rank these backhand flicks without knowing what's next. There are 5 of them. First, Tyson McGuffin.
5. Sorry, Tyson. I feel like you're more of a puncher.
Ooh, that's a good point. A flick is very different than a punch. That's not one that I thought of. Anna Lee Waters.
3.
She's got a little flick action going, mostly like two-hander.
Yeah, and I feel like playing it next to Ben, watching the way he does it, which if he's in this list, he's going to be 1 or 2. I don't know who else you're going to name, but she's definitely like absorbing a lot of that and watching the way he pulls it off. So
Yeah, and she can basically do anything on the pickleball court. So
yeah.
You said it. Number 3, Ben Johns.
I'm just going to go 1 to be safe. He is I feel like he is partially the reason why the backhand flick is as prominent in practice as it is, especially at the amateur level. He's a backhand flick goat.
He's the originator. Next we have Connor Garnett.
What have I done so far? 1, 3, and 5?
You've done 1, 3, and 5.
Connor Garnett's going to go 4. I don't know what 2 is going to be, but I feel like they're going to have a good flick.
Number 2, Mari Humberg, the flick
Number 2.
wizard.
Number 2. So Ben Johns, Mari Humberg. What was my 3? Anna Lee.
You had
4, Connor
Ben
Garnett.
Johns.
5, Tyson McGuffin.
Yeah. I feel like that's a decent list. I feel like you'd have to flip Tyson and Connor, but pretty good list.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're playing that again next episode, but with other topics.
Yeah. I think we should. I think it's a really good little segment, blind rankings. So I think we should try each doing like one. And now that we kind of get the flow of it, but I think that could be a cool social clip. Especially like using some of the formatting that I sent in that YouTube short.
Yeah. No, I've seen those clips. I've seen it. I've seen a lot of it with like rappers and like basketball lineups and stuff like that. So
yeah, that seems like kind of a low hanging fruit one. I don't know. We'll see. So,
how many cracked pickleballs have you tossed in the trash lately? Too many, right? Komodo Pickleball has a solution, the BioBall. It's the world's first USAPA approved biodegradable pickleball that lasts up to 5 times longer than standard balls, up to 70 games, thanks to technology that prevents them from going out of round so fast. Consistent bounce, superior control, and eco-friendly. Win for your game, win for the planet. Get your BioBalls at komodopickleball.com or visit the link in the description. Let's keep our courts green, one rally at a time. That's KOMODO pickleball.com. All right, so you are an archaeologist, you're a skateboarder, you're a pickleball expert. What other? There's got to be like one other random skill or hobby or thing about you that we don't know.
Yeah, drummer. So if you go check out John Q, same spelling, drumming. That was my first YouTube channel. I did like progressive metal drumming.
And so are you doing archaeology like still to this day? What's your full-time gig?
Yeah, I'm full-time as pickleball now, but I still am contract. So I used to run the Colorado office for a company, a consulting archaeology company. And, I still review stuff just briefly for them. But for the most part, yeah, pickleball's my gig right now.
All right, just to get everybody who plays pickleball to turn off the podcast, we're just turning off viewers right now. But what are the implications of Gobekli Tepe?
Oh, okay. It just turned into the Joe Rogan podcast.
What the hell are you guys talking about?
So,
just some ancient ruins that upended the theory of human civilization and mainstream archaeology's perspective on how advanced ancient humans actually were. It's not a big deal.
This is some ancient aliens shit, huh?
Yeah,
it could be. Depends on how many Rogan episodes you've listened to.
Not enough, apparently.
Yeah. It's a site in Turkey, a Neolithic site with really advanced architecture and technology. But as I used to tell my students when I did teach, if there were any evidence for aliens in our past, I would be the first to announce it and to embrace it. Unfortunately, there's no real clear evidence for like extraterrestrial help and the human lineage. But I know it's not the sexy answer, and there are a ton of people that love, myself included. I love watching those ancient aliens shows because they're just compelling. You got the guy with the crazy
There's
hair.
no aliens. How do you explain Elon Musk?
That's true. I'm going to change my line on this, Zane, after that perspective.
There we go. Agents of change. All right, we should talk about pickleball at some point. What do you think, Tommy?
Yeah,
all right. Well, so John, you've done a couple of cool things recently. But first, I tweeted out that the Ronbus Ripple got delisted, and USA Pickleball was quick to fact check me and say that that it was never listed in the first place.
Right.
What's going on?
Yeah, you're not to blame. You're not the only one who's confused. In fact, all of us paddle reviewers were confused also. And let me take you back 2 weeks then to the USAP media event. So I went with a couple other paddle reviewers, Chris Olson, Braden Unsicker, Rafa from Pickleball Tech Dude. And there were a couple other media there, John from Speak Pickleball, and then a bunch of paddle manufacturers, paddle company owners and representatives and that sort of thing. And USAP was walking us through their laboratory at Element Space and Defense in Baltimore. So we got to see their PBCoR machine and all the other high-tech stuff, x-rays, CT scans, and everything they're doing. And then there was a Q&A at the end. And let me know if I'm going too deep here. I feel like I'm already off on a tangent. So the paddle companies were voicing their concern that USAP was not doing break-in testing. They weren't testing for break-in. And they were like, all right, well, what if somebody comes in right at the limit of 0.43 PBCoR, they get approved, then their paddle heats up to 0.5, much hotter. What are you doing to prevent that and to test for that? And USAP was basically like, well, that's the paddle company's responsibility that they don't go over that. We don't have any policies to test for that. So in that context, the Ripple came up as a paddle that's hits really hard, just as hard as the recently sunset, Gearbox Pro Power Elongated and the Yola Mod TA15. It does hit as hard as those, and it breaks in similar to those, if not more. So they were like, how is this paddle going to be legal? And then USAP responded that literally like the day before this media event, they pulled they declined the Ripple from being listed. So there are two stories to this. USAP story was that Ronbus put the cart before the horse, and they got some prototype testing of the Ripple and seeded that to us reviewers, saying that it was approved. We, talked about it on a podcast and got some buzz around it. And then they were set to release this paddle that would have sold a lot. Like, there's a lot of interest in this Ripple. And the day before, USAP said, well, this failed our PBCoR test. It came at over 0.43, so you cannot release it. Ronbus's story is that they got approval. And in fact, there's an early version of the Ripple is approved on the USAP list of certified paddles. If you go to their website.
Yeah, because I feel like people have been playing with a Ronbus Ripple since summer of last year. Am I wrong in there? Like, I remember going to this event in New York City, and there were several players there that were playing with a Ronbus Ripple, and that's when I first heard about it. So I didn't realize there's different versions of this paddle as well.
Yeah. So there was indeed a Ronbus Ripple that was, I forget what month last year it was approved, late last year. That it was approved. There were two shapes, the R1 elongated and R2 standard wide body. And it never went out officially like mass market, but Ronbus has this program called the Connect program. It's for members only, and it's like their testing lab, right? And they didn't want to release it fully because I don't know why. They didn't have the written confirmation, I think, from USAP that it was PBCoR approved. It was only verbal. And so they sent it out to their Connect members. So I saw several in the wild at tournaments and that sort of thing. It went out a lot wider than I expected. And
at tournaments, though, like, are these tournaments where you have to have a USAP paddle?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so it was approved. These Ronbus Ripples, some versions of them were approved at some point, and you could play with them in a USAP tournament.
Exactly. As far as I know, they still are approved. Then Ronbus' story goes further to say that, okay, these Connect members who were playing with them realized that there was an issue with the edge guard coming off the top. So they reconfigured the Ripple to fix the edge guard issue. They sent out another version of the Ripple to us paddle reviewers, which was crazy hot. I mean, it had a super bassy tone, sounded totally different. It was hotter than the original Ripple, hotter than any other paddle on the market that's approved. I mean, similar to like the Diadem Hush, crazy power. Ronbus later came back and said, sorry, we sent the reviewers the wrong ones. These were, not meant to be sent out. Just pretend like they never happened. Then a third version came out, which was the production model that I showed you last time. So this is the one that has the actual PBCoR approved stamp on it, right? Okay. So we all got these and we assumed, okay, these are PBCoR approved. We got a release date. We all filmed our reviews of it. And similar to what, Zane, last time you and I were on the podcast together, I was saying that I don't think this paddle is good for the sport. It's too powerful. And given all the lead up to this, my review was, I think this is an amazing paddle. I would not recommend purchasing it because I'm not convinced that it's going to be delisted, because there's some fishiness around, so many different varieties and models of this being released. And I think that the word will get out to USAP and they'll eventually scrutinize it a little more and realize that it's too powerful. So that was my unreleased review. And then they got
that aged quite well.
Yeah. I can send out the notes of it at some point, but anyway, the day before it was set for release, it was USAP put out a statement saying, or they contacted Ronbus saying this paddle fails PBCoR, so he did not go through with the release. So two sides of the story. One is Ronbus put the cart before the horse, wasn't actually approved because they had changed the original configuration of the paddle that was approved to the extent that they needed new certification. They only got prototype certification of that second paddle. And then Ronbus is that he thought that, he did have approval for that second, third iteration. And, I talked to Dong, the owner of Ronbus, this morning, in fact, and he was like, I never got written certification, but I thought based on our telephone conversations with USAP that we were ready to go. So my misunderstanding on that. Regardless, that's where we are.
Got it. So it sounds like Ron was the name of the guy who Ron?
Dong.
Don. Okay.
D-O-N-G. Dong. Yeah.
Dong. Gotcha. Sounds like he's taking some accountability for this, right? Rather than the opposite being. So there's no like YOLO lawsuit coming on this.
No, and he's a very small company, and he doesn't have the means to go to court. I mean, he's certainly not happy. I think he took responsibility specifically for, not knowing exactly the rules with regard to getting that certified. And to his credit, it has been a bit murky, because PBCoR was just released, and I don't know if take it for what it's worth. That's his story. USAP's story is that that he knew and or should have known at least, and shouldn't have planned to release it until he got full certification.
Do you know what
Gotcha.
motivated USA Pickleball asking for the second batch of paddles to test again? Did it have to do with all the creators talking about it and kind of casting that doubt? Like, is this really legal?
That's a suspicion. Not from. That's not my opinion, but I've heard that suspicion voiced here and there on forums, and Dong thinks so to the owner of Ronbus. And I don't know. I did hear from Carl at USAP at the media event that they do watch our videos and listen to, our podcasts and that sort of thing. So it may have alerted them, but I'm not entirely sure.
What's like the general? So clearly, you're talking to a lot of paddle manufacturers. I'm sure there's a Illuminati paddle reviewer group chat somewhere that I wish I could be in, because I'm sure you guys are talking about a lot of interesting things. But like consensus amongst people in that space, as far as having that USAP versus UPA approved stamp, what do you feel like they're prioritizing more? Which one is more important? Is that UPA stamp of approval increasingly becoming important? I assume it is, but would just be curious to hear, like, how are people looking at those two, the difference, and where the priority lies?
Yeah, I think you're right on most accounts, Thomas. I think right now USAP is still the main stamp because UPA-A is dealing only with PPA, MLP, pro events, and then there was a lot of suspicion of UPA-A toward the beginning, and their affiliated lab PPL, who does their paddle testing. There were the Selkirk letters that were leaked that was calling PPL, leadership incompetent and that sort of stuff. Tom Barnes of Selkirk has since dialed that back and, acknowledged that they do have good professionals at PPL. And now I think, USAP is still a stamp to get, especially for smaller brands of paddles that aren't dealing with pro events. But PPL certainly has established themselves as a very reputable lab. I published a video last week, and before I went to the USAP media event, I was in Boca Raton interviewing the engineers at the PPL lab. They gave me a tour. I interviewed them. I think that interview is coming out today or tomorrow. And they're some of the brightest minds in sports equipment testing. They come from the two biggest centers at Washington State University and UMass Lowell, and their mentors were the people that actually created BBCoR, so for baseball, right? And that's what has been adopted for pickleball. And they're doing great things in the lab, as far as I could tell from my visit. So I think that seeing inside their lab and that the tour I did and the interview I did with them has elevated their status in terms of, people are trusting them, that at least the PPL, which is independent from UPA-A. UPA-A contracts to the PPL to serve them for their paddle certification needs. But I think everybody realizes now the PPL is legitimate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then so that paddle you held up, the PBCoR stamp, is that something new? My understanding was that was just a part of the larger testing process. Based on that, it looks like it's its own thing.
Yeah. So moving forward, paddle companies will we'll be getting the PBCoR stamp. This is another new one from Gearbox with the PBCoR stamp on it as well. The new carbon true foams, they will have the PBCoR stamp on them as well. So basically every paddle that's going to be approved moving forward through USAP will have PBCoR, as well as the UPA-A paddles. I don't know if they're going to have that. So they call it something different at PPL. It's UPA-A. It's a paddle efficiency factor, so PEF, and that's to distinguish that score from the PBCoR of the USAP, because they're slightly different. They're using slightly different numbers, right? So I don't know if they're going to have PEF stamps underneath the UPA-A. Pretty soon, the whole paddle face is going to be covered with.
I was going to say that one's already got like 4 stamps on there.
Right. It's a quiet stamp too.
Right.
So
Interesting.
we'll see.
So is that? I mean, it's almost like they're creating it's like a brand around that, but that's underneath USA Pickleball. That's just a specific testing process within USA Pickleball's larger testing process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to clarify, PBCoR is this method where they're shooting a ball at a paddle, clamped paddle, and measuring the inbound versus outbound velocity. A whole bunch of other stuff goes into that equation, but that's the gist of it. Like how efficient is the paddle at returning energy, and that's the way to cap power on paddles.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So one more really important question from me. Am I just a total douche if I show up with a Ronbus Ripple now?
I guess it's the new mod, right? So, you can still use the original ones that are approved. As far as I know, I would not recommend going. I don't think you can buy them anymore, but I wouldn't buy them. If somebody's selling them on Craigslist or anything, right? Don't play with them in tournaments. It's probably a faux pas.
Okay, so I'd be a douche. Anyway, we're asking the hard-hitting questions here.
Right.
It's what people wanted to know. Well, good. Tommy, you got anything else?
No, I think that's enough nerdy paddle talk for me. It's all my brain can take for one day.
All right.
No, this is good. We appreciate you coming on, John, and educating us, because I just didn't want to get slapped with more facts from USA Pickleball.
Oh, well, I appreciate having me on again. And unrelated to paddles, Thomas, did you watch PPA event last weekend?
Only a little bit, not a ton.
Did you see the Proton ad?
No, what did I miss?
So you and I are featured in a Proton advertisement, playing against Donald Young and Travis Rettenmeyer.
Did we look good?
Well, it's Travis Rettenmeyer hitting a ball into the net cord, and it dribbles over, and he's like, they got him doing this. Like, it looked pretty cool, and then I looked a little closer, and I'm like, that's me and Thomas playing in that exhibition match.
So he sellied a net cord?
Yeah,
that's Travis.
He was joking.
That's classic Travis.
Yeah, so on brand.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, cool. I like the cameo.
Yeah. All right, guys. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk to both of you.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, dude. Thanks, John.
Take care.
Let's rip.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for joining us. We tried to make it happen in Australia. Couldn't make it happen, but now we're doing it virtually, and you guys have a lot of news, a lot of interesting stuff to talk about, whether that is wave sports, whether that's being the first international players to sign with the PPA to come play in the US, the Proton deals, beating Fed, lots of good stuff from you guys. So, like, first and foremost, would you guys just mind introducing yourselves real quickly, and like saying a word or two about yourselves?
Okay, cool. Well,
sure, you go.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm Helena, 23, from Melbourne, Australia.
Well, thanks for having us, Zane. Obviously, I'm Tom Evans, 23 from Australia as well. Just very new. We're very new to pickleball. Really happy to be signed over here in the US, and keen to see how far we can go.
Yeah. So you guys must have been like very good tennis players before just magically picking up pickleball and getting very good and getting signed within only a few months of playing, right? Like, what was the tennis background?
Yeah, well, I mean, we got asked that same question, I think, by James Ignatowicz the other day. But Jack Sock was standing right there, so we couldn't really. It was kind of awkward. But,
because he's so good at tennis. So then for us to say we were somewhat good doesn't seem right.
Yeah, like we were good juniors. Like we played, a couple of the junior Grand Slams, that sort of level. Played a few years on the ATP tours, and I was around 1,000-ish. Helena stopped a little bit earlier than me, but yeah, our tennis skills are all there for sure.
But not at the level of Jack or Jeannie or anything like
Yeah,
that.
so getting asked that was kind of tough when they were around.
It's all right. There's plenty of different levels. Me and Thomas are way down there at the bottom. Thomas, did you play much? Do you play much tennis or?
I got a pretty good forehand. That's about it, though.
That's all you need.
Yeah. Just don't hit it to my backhand.
Did you guys
That's all you
play
need.
pickleball?
A little bit. I was forced to do it as a kid, as part of the family process, but not very competitively.
Do you play pickleball, Thomas?
Yeah. Well, I don't like that
That's
question.
debatable.
I don't like
That's
that question
debatable.
at all. Tom, I'll send you some clips after this, and then you can rate me. Okay.
Okay, done.
Oh yeah, we got to do a guess my duper of Thomas. That would be a
Yeah,
good
I like
segment.
that actually.
I like that.
I'm gonna send a Slack right now, and maybe we can get some clips ready to go by the end of this thing, and then we can do a little guess my duper. I would be curious.
That'd be
to see what they
perfect.
say.
Yeah. I feel like we should do that. That should be a recurring thing. But yeah, so I played tennis as well. I played D3 tennis in Wisconsin Whitewater. So yeah, definitely not the best tennis player on tour, but we've made it work so far in pickleball. So after quitting tennis, or maybe even prior to quitting tennis, did you guys have your eyes on pickleball as or take me through the transition from tennis to pickleball for the both of you guys?
Well, we barely heard about it. I think we've seen maybe one YouTube video here and there. We're kind of like, what's that? And then didn't really think anything of it. I was at a professional tournament in Queensland, and I was pretty fed up with tennis. I was at my kind of wit's end, and we tried a bunch of different sports. We tried table tennis, badminton, and we saw pickleball popping up a little bit more, and we're like, let's try it. Why not? And instantly fell in love with it, and yeah, we just haven't stopped since.
So you were just trying different racket sports. We want to transition.
I was sick of tennis. I was like I'm hating it. Not enjoying it. Tried table tennis for a bit of fun. Tried badminton. That was worse than tennis. I was terrible at that.
We pretty much on a date because Tom was really burnt out from tennis. We traveled for a year in Europe and then 9 months in Africa playing Tom was playing the futures, and obviously we didn't have any plan or anything, so then he ended up getting really burnt out, and so then we're like, let's just play a sport for fun, because when it gets really serious and it gets to the point where you can't even have fun anymore on the court. So we that's why we tried all those different ones, and then we played pickleball, and we were like, this is so fun. And then some people saw us hitting, and they were like, you should come hit with some of the best Australian players. And so we went the next day to hit, and we were really pushing them in sets on our first day in our first day hitting, and we're like, wait, we need to reevaluate.
They said you can make a career out of this. What do you mean you can make a career?
Yeah, we were
we're losing money in tennis, let alone this new weird sport. What are you talking about? You're making money. And then
wait, when was this? Was this 2023?
This is
2020.
This is December 23. This is
okay.
And we were using the equivalent for you guys Walmart paddles, and we were just
sure
messing around a little bit.
But it was so fun. It felt like competitive mini tennis. And so we were like, hold on, we need to play this.
Yeah.
You guys sound like me in a little bit. I was just a racket sports junkie before I found pickleball. I would try any racket sport. They're all just so much fun.
They're so fun. I know. They're really fun.
So was tennis your best one, or were you playing table tennis as well? What was your?
It was my most serious one. So yeah, I would say it was my best one, but I was nothing special in tennis. I don't know what my UTR was, but I played pretty good level D3 tennis in the States at a good team. So
let's see.
Yeah. So okay, so you first start out playing pickleball in December of 2023. You fall in love with it right away. You probably get pretty good pretty quickly, and then we saw strong result from you, Tom, at the end of the year last year, taking a game off of Fed, and I think you had a nice win before that, right?
So
Like-
I qualified in San Clemente. I beat Rafa, then I beat Tyler, and then I lost 1-8 to Fed. The second game I was up like 8-5, I believe, and then it was like, you know, he did his thing and won the set, but it was close. It was a good game.
Gotcha. So, like, at what point during that whole, like, 2023 to 2024 did you say, like, all right, full-time, full bore pickleball, we're going to go all in on this?
That's a great question. When was that? I mean, we were never really, like, as in, like, we were training, like for the first 3 months, we kind of, like, we didn't really know what to do because, like,
Yeah.
like we kind of didn't know any pathway. We, like, obviously knew about, like, the top guys being in the US, but, like, we had no real idea, like, what the leagues were, what these acronyms were. Like, we're just kind of, like, playing for a bit of fun. Like, we're kind of good, like, early, like, as in, like, from Australia.
Because it's so new still in Australia, so we were just kind of playing it with, like, a lot of hope, but we didn't necessarily know until, like, some more things came out.
I'm gonna say probably after probably just before we said we're gonna go to the US, we'll probably like, let's take this bit more seriously, I reckon. So probably
like March.
Yeah, April, May-ish, somewhere around there.
So you come to the US, you play well, you feel like you're playing tight with some of the better American players. Are you, like, discovered by Connor and Chris Patrick, and people are, like, coming up to you and trying to throw contracts at you? Because, like, why are you guys of all of the, you know, the Armand Bhatia or the Joey Wild, Mitch Hargraves, names that might have been around for a little bit longer than you guys, how come you guys are the very first ones to be signing a contract to come play in the States? And why did you decide to play in the States as opposed to playing PPA, MLP, Australia, or PWR, or come and play APP? Like, why PPA and why here in the States?
Well, for that second part of the question, it's because it's the most fresh in my head. When we first came to San Clemente and we saw the environment and, like, the professionalism, that was really even things we sought out after in tennis. So then when we got the opportunity to do that in the US and we saw that whole tournament, we were pretty sold on, like, wait, we really want to come to the US. Like, if we're going to play anything, whatever it was, a sport, you always want to be where the best are and, like, you know, wherever the most professional environment is and the most established place. So when we had seen it, we were pretty sold from San Clemente that if we get an opportunity to come to the US, for us, that kind of trumps all.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right. So, Zane, are you what are you doing over there? Are you distracted right now? Why don't we focus up? Okay.
Am I distracted? What do you mean?
Oh, you
get in line, Zane. Jeez.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So
you take it from here, Thomas.
No, I have a few questions. Okay. I have a few questions. I want to know. So you guys are first starting to explore pickleball, right? I imagine, like, one of the first things you do is, like, you jump on social media and, like, try and figure out who are the players, watch highlights and stuff like that. But coming into it, and I guess now maybe it's changed, but when you were on the outside looking in, who of the pros was, like, the biggest personality who maybe, like, seeing in person playing against was like, oh, this person is kind of larger than life, watch them a lot on social media, and maybe it was like almost being starstruck seeing them for the first time? Like, who's that, like, jump off the page personality in pickleball?
I think watching on, like, on the outside, like, before meeting them, I think Tyson's probably a big standout in terms of, like, a big personality. I was kind of like, what? Like, he's kind of got, you know, big personality. I love that. You know, he gets really involved with the crowd.
What's big about it?
Very engaging to watch. It was really cool.
He's, like, barking at people. Is that what you mean by big personality?
Oh, I don't know.
It was good to like, watching him. He just was so interactive with the crowd. Like, he made it really entertaining in terms of, like, just his energy. You know, like, wins crazy shots and, like, great energy after he wins a point.
I thought that was really cool to see, particularly from
Yeah, no, I'm being facetious. He has a massive personality, and I kind of guessed that was going to be your your go-to, so that makes sense. In Australia, like, are there different pockets of pickleball? Like here in the US, we have these little pockets where, okay, if you want to train and make it to a high level in pro, like you go move to this area because they have density of talent. What are those areas in Australia, or maybe there's just one?
I think it's quite similar in Australia to the US, but just on a way smaller scale. I think you probably got the biggest number of players probably in Queensland with like Joey, Danny, a few of those sorts of guys like George. There's a bunch of those guys up there that all train together. And then I think now the next best spot I'd say is probably Melbourne now with Helena, myself, Zach Grabovic, and a few others. And then you got Sydney with Mitch. I'm not sure exactly who he trains with. There's a few guys he trains with that are good, but it's kind of like there's, like you said, similar like little pockets of areas for sure.
Do you feel like it is getting closer or on par with the level of popularity in the US? Like walking around Australia, do people know what pickleball is, or is it still kind of this like quirky thing on the periphery that people aren't exactly familiar with yet?
Yeah, it's still there, I would say, but it's definitely growing so much really quickly. Like even from because we hadn't really heard of pickleball at all, to be honest, before we started. And then since we've started playing, you start hearing around people kind of know what pickleball is. Even for so long, I just kept saying, like, I just play tennis because no one knew pickleball. So I was just saying tennis. But now when we say pickleball, some more people are like, oh, yeah, I think I've heard of that.
Yeah. Like some Uber drivers like, oh, yeah, I've heard of that. Or random people. But it's definitely growing. But, yeah, there's still that vast majority of people who don't know really what it is.
Yeah.
Do you think you're the first of a wave of players to sign with PPA, MLP, UPA in the States? Or do you think you guys are going to be a unique case for, the next year or so?
I mean, I hope we are. I mean, I hope we're, the first wave. But I have no idea. We'll see, kind of see what happens. But that'd be really cool to get more Australians, more people from Asia, more people from even Europe would be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, eventually it'll be talent from all over the place, right? We just, in the States, have a bit of a pretty good head start, but there's nothing stopping this. Like, I do think players like Armin, you guys, Joey, Rose expressed some interest in, like, coming over and playing PPA US. Like, it will eventually end up that way. We've just got a bit of a head start.
For sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
there probably aren't going to be too many more D3 tennis athletes converting over and actually having a little bit of success.
Hey, you never know.
Those days might be numbered.
No, you never know.
So I know you're in the States right now. When are you two officially making the full-time move? And where are you going to move to?
That's a great question.
We're still deciding where we're going to move to. In terms of time, we'll probably be full-time as of like June, because we have to be back and forth between Australia every few weeks. And yeah, we're still deciding fully on the place, but we have a few options.
Yeah, wait, give me the top locations.
Arizona, Florida, and
probably somewhere in Texas. We've got family in Texas, so
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
you guys
Austin's the obvious move. Yeah. I'm in New York, just moved from Austin. Zane's over there in Austin.
Cool.
How is it there?
Yeah, Austin's a good spot. I love Austin. I moved from Wisconsin. I didn't hear that on your guys' list. But I moved from Wisconsin back in 2022 to Austin, and it's an awesome town. Love living here for sure. And we have so many players here. I think it's probably the second biggest hub other than Southeast Florida, I would guess. I would probably put Southeast Florida higher in terms of like number of players, but I mean, there's plenty of players here, and I think it's a cooler place to be than Southeast Florida, respectfully.
I love that.
Yeah, I always say Austin is like the perception of LA weather. That's actually Austin. Like, it's always sunny, always nice. Just in the summer, it gets insanely hot for like 2 months. But other than that, it's like perfect all year round.
Nice.
So,
Okay.
There's my pitch for you. Unless you want to come to New York, and I'll finally have some people who will play with me, assuming you play.
Well, you got to send me.
Well, they've got to guess your DUPR first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So are you both signed paddle deals at this point?
Yeah.
Yes. Proton.
Okay, so that's probably part of the reason you might consider Phoenix area. I bet you're getting recruited pretty hard by the Proton crew.
Well, I mean, it's definitely yeah. I mean, obviously, it'd be great to be in Arizona with Proton being so close. We'll have to see overall like what we do. But yeah, that's definitely a good point you make with the Proton being here for sure.
Who are the? I need you to rank them. Who are the top 3 male and female players in Australia? Feel free to throw yourself in there.
Oh,
Wait, Tommy, we gotta like singles, doubles, mixed doubles. Like, what is the what's the rating system there?
Yeah, let's go gender doubles to start.
Gender doubles, okay.
Well, in all seriousness, I actually don't really know because I don't watch many other people play. We very much just kind of play our matches and leave. Like, in all seriousness, that's actually what we do. So I don't know. But I think ranking wise, like,
I think I might take the 5th on that question.
Yeah, I really don't know. Like, I think all the players are really good, but
I mean, it's tough to say directly 1, 2, and 3, or like one, like to actually rank them. There's I think that you got that top group, and then you kind of got like a drop off. But to say 1, 2, and 3 definitively is really tough.
I think we're all 1.
Yes.
Oh boy,
get off. Cancel the pod.
It's new. They just don't want to piss anybody off. I get that. I was like that one time. Now I don't care who I piss off anymore. I.e. getting nasty Nelsoned by Jack Sock.
I actually don't know. Like I don't think I can say one girl or one guy's better than another. Especially for me, I only know more of the girls than the guys. So obviously, to me, Tom's always going to be 1. And then the girls are very, from what I've seen, quite even. Like, all the girls are amazing, and everyone kind of beats everyone, or there's a few standouts in like certain areas, but it's really hard to say, like, you know what I mean? You know, when it's still so new and there's not like...
And there's not a definitive like ranking system.
Yeah.
You've got like,
Whereas like the US is so much more established. Example, say like probably Ben and Annalie clearly probably win the most, then they would probably be there. Whereas Australia, it's not like that. It's more like,
Correct.
It really is more even.
Yeah, so there's more parity, and then there's also less events to build up a head record against one another.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So you both signed contracts with is it UPA? So you'll both be playing PPA and then enter the draft for Major League Pickleball.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that a multi-year deal?
That's 3 years.
Maybe they're different. Okay, cool. And then are you at any point, like, let's just say mid-year, you guys are having tremendous success, you guys would be eligible to be drafted in Major League Pickleball feasibly in 2025?
I think we're eligible. Yeah, sorry. I think we're eligible. Yeah.
I think we should be. I don't know how it works.
Yeah,
honestly, I need to read my things.
Got it. Okay. And then what about like obligations to PPA Tour Australia? I mean, I know they're working pretty closely with UPA. So with your contracts, you also have obligations to still play on the PPA Tour Australia or Major League Pickleball Australia?
No, we don't.
Okay. So you guys are like full time. You're like, we're going to the US and
we don't do anything half-heartedly. If we're going to do it, we're going to go all in at whatever we do. So if we have an opportunity to be in the US when we've lived in Australia our whole life, then we're going to explore that avenue as opposed to splitting time between.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. I like the mentality. You got to burn the ships. The American saying. Look it up later.
I think
I get it.
Is that an American saying?
It could be English.
Okay, we'll look that one up afterwards.
Do you have like personal goals for 2025, like where you guys want to end up ranking wise at the end of the year? Do you have any like benchmarks you're aiming for?
I think the biggest thing for us this year is just to just get better, particularly on the double side. Like, obviously, like in Australia, like, you've got heaps of great players, but like we can't really train with each other. And then coming to the US, like everyone does like a lot of different things you wouldn't necessarily think of, like that people do in Australia, and there's a lot of different looks and different talent. So I mean, just this year it's just about getting better. If we end up with a great ranking, that's just a bonus. But I think this year's just great experience and just trying to, obviously, building the ranking points as much as possible so we can get better partners for sure is up there. But like I think the biggest thing is just getting better.
So what's some of like the best advice you've gotten as far as advancing as players as quickly as possible? Obviously, you guys want to progress and establish yourselves as top pros in the US. What's some of the best advice you've gotten? And then after you answer that, Zane will give you some advice.
I think what's worked for us is probably dedicated hard work. Like everyone says, like you got to work hard, but like I think like actual properly focused, dedicated, specific hard work that actually improves specific things really quickly. I think that's probably been the biggest thing that's helped us, and to continue doing that will be the defining factor of how far we can go.
All right, Zane.
Look,
impart some wisdom.
I don't have a tremendous amount to add. Let's see. I would say I don't know what your contract like says. I don't know how many events that you have to play, but it gets really hard to try and peak for every single event, right? Like sometimes peaking for every single event can lead to potentially better short-term results, but not necessarily the sort of long-term growth that you want. So for a lot of players, some players will be like sort of almost training through some of these events, right? Like, if you're doing it correctly, maybe you're skipping the gym sessions early in the week of your tournament, right? If you're really trying to like win that weekend. So it's like almost you have to really sort of like pick your battles and have that sort of long time horizon, as it sounds like you guys do, for just trying to get better every single tournament and be the best pickleball player that you can be. If you focus on that, obviously you guys are both phenomenal tennis players, so I'm not telling you guys anything new. But if you focus on that long term and just continual improvement, 1% every day, like the compounding is enormous over time. But it's definitely easy to get bogged down in like, I want to win this weekend every single time. Reverting, like think about junior tennis even, right? Like there are the players that were called pushers who would just make every ball. They didn't develop good strokes. Like it was great for winning then, but none of those pushers progressed into elite level tennis players, right? And there's a certain degree of that in pickleball. There are certain things that you can do that you can get away with for a certain amount of time that just doesn't work in the long term, right? And so I think having a long time horizon is one of the biggest keys for success in pro pickleball.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. I actually couldn't agree more. Well said.
That's
Thomas
why we have him on the
teed me
pod.
up.
Okay, we got one more question for you. I'm curious, playing against American talent now, seeing what the top level's like, what are some of the major differences between what you were seeing in Australia versus what you've encountered with some of the top personalities on the US side?
As in like playing wise?
Like technique, strategy, power. I mean, it really could be anything, but was there anything that really like jumped out?
Overall, a lot more discipline here. Example, like in Australia, we can probably I'm not saying like against the best players, but because there's not as much players, you can get away with a lot more in Australia. Example, we can kind of just get away with hitting a few dinks and then speeding up early, as opposed to here where everyone's overall a lot better because they've played a lot more experience. So it just be the discipline. Like they make a lot more balls. They don't give you as many silly errors. And if you speed up on the wrong times, they're going to counter back really well. So that's, overall, just in general, is overall better and higher quality.
Yeah.
Tom, you got to have a separate answer. You can't just.
Well, that was my exact answer. I think just just getting like in doubles, like particularly just guys just getting to the line every single point. Whereas in Australia, a lot of people get stuck hitting like crappy thirds or whatever, and not making that line or getting stuck in transition. Whereas you don't see that as often here. Is if you do, it's here and there. Whereas in Australia, it's almost like sometimes it can be here and there if they even get to the line. Not talking about the top end of Australia, but like when you're you just don't have those matches as much here. So I think that's the biggest thing.
All right. Last thing, Zane, unless you have anything else, we're gonna do a little guess my duper.
Oh yeah. Well, I do have one more thing. Tom, you got to take us through your Fed match in Tucson. That was obviously like probably a very validating win for your first tournament back in the States at the beginning of 2025 to take out the player that was a pretty undisputed number one in 2024. Like, how do you feel like that? What happened? How'd that match go? Like, tell us your thoughts on taking down Feddy in the round of 32.
Well, I couldn't be much happier beating him. I mean, like he is the number one for a good reason. He's a great player. I do know he has just switched paddles, which obviously he is still adjusting. But I think beating Fed with any paddle or even using anything is a good win. So I mean, I'll take it. But yeah, I think it's great for my confidence to get that win. He's still he's one of the best. So I mean, just getting that win's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, like it's an slightly unfortunate timing for you, right? Because he's switched paddles, and the focus has been, oh, the Adidas paddle must suck, right? But it's as you said, beating Fed with anything is look, regardless of what paddle the guy is holding, he can play incredible cat and mouse, and he can cover the court phenomenally, right? So you've got to beat him regardless of what he's using. But you've played him back in San Clemente and you played him now. Like, did you notice anything different other than obviously your ascension and your improvement in your own skills?
Yeah, I definitely think my flamingo as well. Like I'm still adjusting to that as well. I think that's definitely helped my power this time around. Obviously his power's not as poppy because he was using the mod against me. So like that was obviously extremely tough fed with a mod, particularly. But yeah, this time, yeah, I think I've obviously improved and adapted more to pickleball, using more drops and getting the ball at his feet a little bit more was my strategy, opposed to just trying to go through him. Because regardless of what he's got in his hand, he's a great mover and great covers the court and can still put balls away regardless of what's in his hand. I mean, yeah, this time I think I just having that experience in San Clemente definitely helped me mentally, kind of like, because I remember coming off that second game thinking like, oh, I could have like won that second game and gone to a third game. So just carrying that little bit of confidence over to this match as well, probably noticing as well he's like taking advantage of the fact that he probably is still adjusting to that new Adidas paddle. So I think that really helped.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope it doesn't overshadow anything, right? Like it's natural for that question, but I do people need to realize like Fed is an absolutely elite player regardless of what he's swinging, and there is not very many better movers than Fed as well. So yeah, that was a solid way to start the US campaign, that's for sure.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, let's guess Thomas's duper.
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's do it.
All right, this is a Matty Pickles special. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Matty Pickles. He's a major U.S. pickleball influencer, and he tends to put together some nice backyard videos. Let's see. What's the best way to do this? Ready?
Bag.
Oh gosh, you're playing well.
Ernie Central.
Yeah, you're just Ernie.
Full body cramps or calf cramps.
Oh, okay.
Oh no.
Oh my god, what a battler. I didn't realize I had a cameo in this video.
Oh, what? You're playing good.
Oh, he had a paddle toss?
that instantly goes up.
All right, guess.
Okay, forgive us because we're not like super like accurate in knowing like dupers and stuff. Because obviously in Australia the duper isn't super accurate. So I'm gonna say 5 5.0. Is that?
Remove the question mark. Just say it. Just say
Okay.
5.
I'm gonna say 5.0.
All right, cool.
I'll say 5.5.
Woo!
Wow.
You can come back on the podcast whenever you want.
I'm gonna say 3.75.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's
no.
tough.
Yeah, welcome to my life, guys.
Are we talking about level or actual like results?
Yeah, well, that's a whole different thing. I'm really good at like pulling
That
off.
it looked like you're a
Yeah.
5.5 to 6.
Yeah, I'm good at highlights, not so good at winning.
Well, what is it? What's your actual DUPR?
I think it's like a 4.6 right now.
Oh, there you
Okay.
go. That's good.
Yeah. I'll send you some screenshots. Back in the day, I had a couple pro wins. I won't bring up which pros I beat because I promised I wouldn't bring that up anymore. But I got a couple. Got a couple under my belt.
I think you should bring that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, who was it?
Eric Lang, Wyatt Stone, Alex Trong.
You beat Daddy Lang? I didn't know you beat Daddy Lang.
Oh, that's my biggest win.
That's awesome.
Oh my god, I'm never gonna let him hear the end of that.
We pickled him in game 2 or game 3. I can't remember, but yeah, I was in Utah 2021.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Damn.
Elite.
get my street cred back up. Connor Pardo always tweets at me that I'm not a 5-0. So
The funniest roasting tweet that I've ever seen of you, Thomas, was James Ignatowicz almost put you in a coffin. He said Thomas really named his company the Dink, but he can't hit one.
That's kind of funny.
That's really tough. Like, that's tough.
all right, I take back what I said about you coming on the pod whenever you want. All right,
He cooked with that one. All right, guys.
thanks for coming on, guys. Good
you,
luck.
guys.
Good luck
Guys,
this weekend.
appreciate the help. Thank you guys.
See you guys in Mesa.
See
See you
ya.
guys.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie,